Hey everyone, Tom here, Alphabetallica, back with the first ever compilation episode of Alphabetallica. So it has came to this. And, I figured it'd be worth going back through the archive, because I always say at the intro of the episodes, go back and check out all the odd episodes, because I do that myself with podcasts that I love. Like, I'm a big fan of Dean Delray, that I've said before, this American comedian who, he kind of styles himself as a rock comic, and he's always like, yo, people love the podcast, but don't come to see me play stand-up. And, he's an okay comedian, he's not really to my taste, he's quite successful, don't get me wrong, but his knowledge of rock and music and his passion for it I fucking love, and he has loads of great guests on there, and I find myself not even wanting to listen to anyone in particular, just downloading old episodes I've never listened to before. So maybe you're in that bag with Alphabetallica and you want to know maybe what to listen to, because there has been a lot of episodes by the time I was recording this. And the reason I'm doing this episode today is because we just did the Trapped Under Ice episode with Mark D. That was the 145th episode that came out on the 2nd of September 2019. And that was the first time in Alphabetallica history, if you want to be counting the stats, that we've completed an album. So we have done the entirety of 1984's Ride the Lightning now. And what is about to follow is a compilation of all 8 of those songs, all 8 of those episodes, where I've cut out the front and the back. So I've cut out the intro where I say, how did you get into Metallica, blah, blah, blah. And then I've cut out the outro with the quick fire questions, who's your favourite member, who's your podcast on, have you seen them live, all that sort of stuff I do for favourite member, favourite song, etc. And just left the innards. Just left the viscera of the episode, just left the times when me and the guest talk about the song and critically interrogate the song and, maybe disagree, maybe agree, maybe go off on tangents. But there's been no exact science. I've not really listened too closely, but I need to cut it off here and then cut it off there. But I just thought this would be fun to do. And, for me personally, it's been fun listening back as well, because it runs the gamut of early episodes to an episode that obviously just ended, that being with the Trapped Under Ice episode with Mark D. So, just before we get to this compilation, follow us at MetallicaPod, MetallicaPod@gmail.com, Patreon.com/Alphabetallica. If you enjoy the show, you want to give back to the show, you want to, just support us financially, help to keep the lights on, and also get access to episodes like this. So this compilation episode you listen to now obviously went on to subscribers first, probably be on the Patreon for 3 or 4 weeks. So, that's all there, but I appreciate it. I listen to a lot of podcasts where I don't contribute either, so it's not a big deal. So just for the love of Metallica, the love of the podcast game. So what we have here, as with Ride the Lightning, is a set of 8 episodes. So the first episode you're going to hear is the Fight Fire with Fire episode. That was number 48 with Liam, the heavy metal kid. I think he was 9 or 10, certainly the youngest Alphabetallica guest I've ever had. And, not blaming him or anything, but it wasn't awkward, but it was just kind of he's a bit younger than I expected, so I had to kind of tailor the episode to a different kind of volume and level and attitude. So, but still, really interesting discussion. Ride the Lightning is the second track, 119 is the episode, with Todd Villalobos. For Whom the Bell Tolls is the third track of Ride the Lightning. That was episode 50 for us at Alphabetallica. That was myself hosting that solo. I'm not really sure how that happened, because normally the solo episodes or the Lulu episodes are some cover that I can't get someone for, but anything legendary like Bells have people clamoring, so I don't really know what that is. Episode 47, just before that, was Fate Black. That was the 4th track of Ride the Lightning with Nick Makoviak. Episode 5 was the one that allowed us to do this episode. Track 5, episode 145, that was Trapped Under Ice with Mark D. Number 6 was Escape, number 45 episode on this end, with Chaos, where he's a French guy, French virtuoso YouTuber who did his own cover of the Alphabetallica theme. We spoke about that at length on that episode. It's still, I just find it a lovely thing, it kind of baffles me that he did it. Thank you so much again, man. Creeping Death was number 7 on Ride the Lightning, and number 27 for us with Adam Deans, also known as Terminal. If you know me, you know that I do a few other podcasts, including Battle Rap Resume, and Terminal is an Irish battle rapper, aka Adam Deans, and this is a fun episode. And then the most recent episode was the most recent, I'm getting tongue-tied here, the oldest episode is episode 21, Call of Cthulhu, the Lovecraftian myth there, explored by myself and Andy Hall, who's a radio DJ. So yeah, essentially, as I explained, how this is going to follow is we're going to play a little clip of the song and then the original episode. Enjoy, go back. There's no more original material from this point on. Maybe this is a cash-in, but I don't really make any money off downloads or anything like that. The only way I do make that is Patreon, but I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking for you to look back and enjoy the show, and maybe if you enjoy the episode and the guests, you want to learn more about them, you relive the chat at the start and at the end. But thank you to all the guests. Thank you to all you guys for listening. The next compilation would feasibly be able to do will be Death Magnetic. So that's going to be episode 150. We're currently on about 145, 106. And that's, the Unforgiven 3. And that closes Death Magnetic. And there's a few others. It kind of, pretty sequential towards the end there. But lots and lots of songs to get through. But, as always, this has been Tom, Alphabetallica, metallicapod@gmail.com, @metallicapod. We're on Spotify. Here's Fight Fire with Fire. Let's talk about the song, Fight Fire with Fire.
Yeah.
It begins with that classical intro.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make? What do you make of the intro?
Well, it's a very good intro. One of my favorite intros.
Yeah, it's very old sounding, medieval like. Something out of a court. It's quite sparkly as well. I like the fact that you can hear the bass low. And I think for a lot of people listening to this, Kill 'Em All, the debut, was pretty much straight up thrash metal, in many respects. So hearing an acoustic intro was a bit different for them. So I think the intro is fantastic. And then getting into the main riff. I mean, it's a bit of a juggernaut, isn't it? Those opening notes. It's quite brutal.
Yeah.
And what do you make of the whole intensity of the track, Liam?
Well, the intro definitely sounds a little bit like Battery. And the song itself sounds a little bit like Battery.
Yeah, definitely. It's sort of James's the lyrics that he's barking out there on top. It's very monosyllabic. It's just kind of 2 or 3 words here and there.
Yeah.
The song, for all intents and purposes, is about nuclear war. Any thoughts on nuclear war, Liam? As a 9-year-old, any insight?
No.
No, fair enough. None of us know what to think about it, and I agree. It's a pretty horrible thing. Is this the sort of Metallica do you like? Do you like the older Metallica, or are you a fan of the more modern band?
Well, I like a lot of the old stuff, but the new album is pretty good. Yeah, definitely. And there is, this track it's a crazy song, and I think everyone knows that this, wonderful. I put it almost on par with Slayer on how heavy it is. It's one of the heaviest Metallica have got. Just the speed, the intensity is there, and the lyrics as well. As I say, being about nuclear war, timing is like a fuse, short and burning fast. Armageddon's here, like said in the past, and the way they address it there. The chorus for you, the da 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 da. Like, are you a fan? Yeah. Definitely.
I don't know, there's something about it that's quite primitive and quite bass, like the way the guitar just mimics what he's singing.
Definitely.
And, we get into the solo as well, which, production-wise, the solo's kind of a little hard to hear. I don't know if that's just me. It's kind of in the mix a bit too deep, and it doesn't stand out, say, as a Creeping Death or a Call of Cthulhu. But what do you think about the guitar sections in the middle of the track?
Well, they're definitely one of Kirk's better solos, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Why would you say that?
It's part of a very heavy song, and heavy songs can sometimes have, the solo can have the effect of,
just pushing it forward. I think sometimes a solo could just be a bit like, what is this? It's just a guitar solo for the sake of it. But I like this one, and obviously it is about atomic apocalypse. So they have to make a big statement solo. And they got the guitar harmonies after the solo as well, which reminds me a little bit at the end of Creeping Death, which I think are awesome. Really, really like those. And it's interesting to hear at the end of the song, when James says the gods are laughing, and you hear the laughing in the track.
Yeah.
Which not something Metallica would do too much, sound effects and, but it's kind of 80s, but it does work well. But any more thoughts on the track, Liam?
Nothing that comes to mind.
No. It is, I think a lot of people recognise this as being, a real classic Metallica song, a real statement, to go from
Good opening track.
Yeah, incredible opening track. Like, I love, again, the fact that it opens on those weird instruments and just sort of, I think it just puts people off kilter. It's sort of saying that this isn't Kill 'Em All 2. You know, we're going to do something a bit different here. And even just in how metal this song is, it's not Kill 'Em All 2. You know, it's just got a bit of an onslaught. And they played it regularly, 329 times they've played the song. They debuted it in 1983. They last played it in Paris, 2017, so quite recently. You saw them live, is that right? You've seen them a few times?
Yeah.
Okay. Where did you see them?
I saw them in Philadelphia at the Lincoln Financial Field, and then I went up to Montreal, Canada, to see them again. And then they played Fight Fire with Fire there.
Oh, did they? Oh, wow. Okay. How was that?
It was good.
Yeah. Was it a good rendition?
Yeah.
It's just such a fast song. Like, whenever I listen to that intro, it just almost shocks me. It's a bit like Damage Inc. Like, I just can't believe the speed that it's coming with. And obviously, you can't believe that James is singing atop the track as well. You know, it is absolutely marvellous. But yeah, I'm jealous you got to see the track, actually. They didn't play it when I saw them, but they do seem to play it quite regular.
Wait for the sign to flip the switch of death. It's the beginning of the end. Sweat chilling cold as I was death before. Consciousness, my only friend. My fingers ripped with fear. What am I doing here? Flash before my eyes. Now it's time to die.
So let's get into the song then, Ride the Lightning, one of the band's most celebrated tracks. I mean, that intro, to me, it's such an obvious choice to make, but I never really heard it before in music, having the high-up guitar parts, really high up the fretboard, and then some low-down hammer blows, you know, cliff down beneath. It's a really powerful combination. It's a really unique opening, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and I think that was their style back then, and I feel like they were writing songs to cater to the live show. And because I just can't imagine what it must have been like for Metallica in 84, 85 to go into every club around the world and to have those two albums at your back and know every night you're going to play Creeping Death and For Whom the Bell Tolls and you are just going to destroy the room. And this is another perfect example of a song that even if you wandered into one of those clubs in 84 and you'd never heard of the band, you would walk out of there going, oh my God, what just happened? I just had my face melted. And the intro to this song, I feel as though they were writing to that experience. And it's why those songs are so great live.
And those up high parts, like, I mean, a lot of people have made the comparison before. I'm not the first to do it. Kind of reminiscent of like flashes of lightning on the chair.
Oh yeah, I never thought of that. Absolutely, yeah.
They kind of have that sort of haywire.
And the harmony, the two-part harmony stuff too, which they were starting to develop around that time. And I think that was probably a Cliff Burton influence. You know, that was fantastic too.
Yeah. And then going from this intro into I guess the main riff, which, you know, you're a guitar player, you know, is one of the simplest Metallica riffs ever, just kind of anchored on that A sharp, that da-da-da-da-da-da. But so compelling. I mean, iconic almost, just really the beating heart of the track.
Yeah, and I love the live version where he goes, "Good God!" You know, that's fantastic. That gets you just going so much. And there's a lot of Metallica cover bands here in San Diego, which is phenomenal. There are 3 really good Metallica cover bands that I go see regularly, at least once every couple months or once a month. And when they play these songs, again, it's just such a great live experience, and you bang in your head, just forgetting everything about the world, and it's all about the music. And that groove right after the intro it just fits in so well.
There's loads of good riffs here, the down, 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 that sort of pulls up on its heels, and you know the sound of James as well. Lest we forget, the songwriting is incredibly sophisticated. The compositions are otherworldly. It's a quantum leap in that realm. But you know, James is growing as a singer as well. But he kind of has that kill 'em all nature to him. I mean, this is only, I just checked just before we went on air. This was Ride the Lightning was released 1 year and 2 days after Kill 'Em All.
Yeah,
which is just
and I know, yeah.
I can't
That's what it was back then. that was what it was back then. It was tour and write, tour and write, tour and write. So you're always touring and writing, especially when you're living hand to mouth and you can barely afford, money for dinner that night or a place to stay. That's all you have to do is tour and write, and plus that's going to lead to your success. So when you have a dedicated group of guys like them, man, it's just write.
And what do you make of his vocals throughout? Because I've said before, like on Kill 'Em All and stuff, it sounds a bit prepubescent at times, and even that opening like guilty, it's kind of quite crackly, isn't it? Not in a bad way, in kind of quite a charming way, but he's certainly not the commanding, justice presence that he becomes like.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. My kids make fun of me because they see videos of me when I was in high school or whatever. My voice is a lot higher, and I think that's just part of growing from 18 to 30 is that your voice changes a little bit, gets a little deeper. But I love it. It's a little more higher, death in the air.
Yeah,
and it's going high,
definitely.
and I like it. I don't mind all the different incarnations of James's voice and all that. So it fits with the era. So I don't mind it. I love it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, in terms of the topping, in terms of the lyrics, like just fantastic opening. Guilty as charged, but damn it ain't right. There is someone else controlling me. Like so engrossing.
Yeah, and I know he said many times that this is about a guy, I believe he said this, that this is about a guy wrongly convicted for a crime.
Yeah.
I wish he didn't spell it out. I know he doesn't do that anymore. When people ask him about lyrics, he kind of says, hey, man, it's up to you to interpret this stuff. But back then he was kind of being a little more literal because there would be some room for debate here. Damn it ain't right. There's someone else controlling me. And then at the end, he wakes up from a dream. Well, was it a dream? Was he guilty? Was he not? I know he kind of spells it out and says that it's about a guy wrongly convicted. But if he hadn't said that, there would be a lot of room for interpretation here.
Yeah, James was interviewed in Rolling Stone and he said, quote, "We just got into some social topics. The death penalty was a big question at the time, in the electric chair. What if that was you mistakenly?" That's what the song was about, being accidentally found guilty and put to death with no way to stop it. And the title itself, I don't know if you're aware of this, was actually taken from a Stephen King novel, The Stand.
Yeah, I guess Kirk Hammett was reading it and saw that and brought it into said, God, that'd be a great name for a song, and it ended up being the name for the album, too.
Yeah, it's a terrific name, isn't it, for a song on an album?
Yeah, and they're so cool about coming up with great topics too. I mean, this is such a great topic. I mean, if you just go throughout their catalog, I mean, you've got Four Horsemen and Creeping Death come from the Bible. You've got this one about execution. You've got songs about war with One and For Whom the Bell Tolls and suicide. And there's the H.P. Lovecraft stuff.
The Cthulhu, all the mythos of that. Mm-hmm.
Drug addiction with Master of Puppets and Sanitarium, and I don't know what the thing that should not be. It's kind of a freaky horror film vibe, and a lot of songs about self-introspective. They've always been so great about coming up with really interesting topics.
I mean, nothing about cruising for chicks. Nothing ever about that. Like, they don't touch that topic. That was like the zeitgeist at the time, and they just completely sidestep it.
Yeah, they hated all those bands, like Poison and Motley Crue that were going around L.A. in spandex and makeup trying to just get chicks. So it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And, as we push forward, like, one of the song's most memorable points is the chorus, the burning in my brain. Like, it has quite and I don't mean it in a negative way, like quite a sing-song, almost nursery rhyme quality to it, you know what I mean? It's kind of quite childlike, the melody.
Yeah, that's true. And they weren't big on choruses back then, so I feel that they just wanted to keep it short and sweet, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And, I mean, anything but short and sweet is Kirk's solo, which effectively forms the centerpiece and is kind of one of his real defining early works, I think. I think Ride the Lightning as a whole has some of his ultimate lead work.
As I was going back through this, I was going to ask you, can you name a better Kirk performance than Ride the Lightning? Because I know there may be some that are as good, but this is a really good solo.
Yeah, it's an incredible solo. I think tied together as a whole, there are others that I do prefer. I prefer the Damage Inc. solo, just for being a sort of frenzied bit of Mixolydian mayhem. I think the Creeping Death solo, as just a lead work, narratively holds together a little stronger. The Fade to Black outro solo still gives me chills.
Yeah, and I think he uses a bit of the same exact part in Ride the Lightning. At the end of Ride the Lightning, the same exact riff as he uses on the end of Fade to Black. I don't know if you've ever noticed that.
Yeah. I know the point you're mentioning, and I mean, your solo as a whole never gets boring, which, a lot of these longer solos can. Like, another good example maybe be like Pearl Jam's Alive. That's a really long solo, but that never gets boring. That just kind of has great patterning and great section stuff. But yeah, I really, really love this solo, and it does have a lot of self-harmonized sections. It stops and funnels down and then ramps back up. And it's funny you mentioned Yngwie before, because I actually had that in my notes. Like, there's a lot of neoclassical stuff in the solo.
Yeah, and I think he was taking lessons from Steve Vai at the time that he was writing.
Joe Satriani.
Was it Satriani?
Yeah,
I thought I read Vai. Maybe it was Satriani.
I think it was. I don't think Vai really gave lessons, because Vai got lessons from Satriani.
Okay, I got you. Maybe I had that wrong. Yeah, Satriani. I think it was around this time that he was writing all this stuff. So I think those lessons with Satriani was encouraging him to try to push this stuff a little further.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's basically like 2 minutes of solo, and there's a lot of longer songs on Ride the Lightning. They're all around this 6.5 minute mark. Okay, there's a few like Escape and Trapped Under Ice and whatever. I guess 4505. I'm kind of defeating my own argument here, but there are quite a few that are 6.5 minutes. Creepy Death is, Fade to Black is, Cthulhu is kind of in that area as well. But it's an interesting decision, isn't it? And just before we get into the solo, the kind of dun da da dun da da bum bum bum, that's progressive. That heralds to me towards the master and justice ideas, the slowing it down, the fleshing it out. There's a real maturity in the writing.
Yeah, but that's also part of the live experience too, because now the crowd's going, hey, hey. It slows down, then it speeds up, and you have a time change actually in the solo too, which is very unique.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, this song's an all-time classic. Everyone listening to that knows this song, and lyrically as well, it just works so well. And there's "Someone Help Me," "Oh Please God Help Me." The desperation in James's voice is haunting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Dave Mustaine is credited with writing on this track. I couldn't find out what exactly he wrote. Did you ever look into that, or?
I did not. I just saw he was credited. I think this was the last, Ride the Lightning's the last album he has credits on. But I don't know. Maybe that after the intro, that groove that you were talking about, that could be a little mustache. I don't know. I don't know what part he would have played on this one.
Yeah. I mean, let us know. Metallicapod@gmail.com. I'm sure lots of people will know out there as well. But, all in all, just a triumph, an absolutely mind-bending track. A huge achievement for them, and it kind of makes sense they would immortalise this as the title track, and of course the album artwork as well. They've played it 354 times live. So they debuted it Halloween in Palo Alto, California, 1983. They last played it about 3 weeks ago in Paris, 2019. I would have thought they would have played it a bit more. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily a song they play all the time.
I was stunned when I looked that up. They basically played this song as many times as they played King Nothing in concert.
That's crazy.
And it's just amazing. And they've played it less than half of Harvester of Sorrow, Last Caress, and Whiplash. I just find that it's amazing. Yeah. They have not played this. In other words, to put things in context, you say 354 times. They've played Master of Puppets over 1,600 times. So putting that in context, this is a way underplayed song. I was very surprised.
And what would you make of Lars's playing on the track?
I think it's great. Look, I've never understood. I know that when Lars went to record this album, the Rasmussen and all his buddies were stunned at his lack of ability. They really had to kind of teach him how to properly be a studio, record a studio album. But I've really never understood all this criticism that he gets. I think he's a fantastic drummer. Yeah. He's perfect for the band. I think this is a good example of what he contributes to a lot of the songs. I've never really got a lot of the Lars hate in terms of his playing.
No, me neither. I mean, I don't drum. I have no real idea of that language. But, in terms of musicality, in terms of feel, and I think there's a lot of aggression in here. There's a lot of cool feels as well, especially towards the end. And he just enlivens proceedings. You can tell that Fleming was maybe coaching him somewhat through this. And, you can hear a lot of growth on his part as well. You can't hear too much of Cliff in the song. I do try and listen out for it. Sometimes he really hits through the mix. I don't know about you. Did you detect much of his playing here?
No, but you know what? I think that's actually part of what made Cliff great was that he could take a starring role, but then when he needed to, he could just kind of sit in back and just kind of support everybody else. And I think that's what he's just doing here. He's like, look, this is a great song. It's got great riffs. I don't need to do anything crazy, so I can play that fill-in role as well.
Mm-hmm. And as we always do, we reach out to you guys at MetallicaPod on Twitter. Nick, it just says simply that middle section and does the horns emoji. Ralph says, fantastic title track of a masterpiece of an album. This was the band's great leap forward from Kill 'Em All in every aspect as musicians, and it shows on this song. James's singing voice has matured, and so is his lyric writing, talking about the wrongly accused being unjustly executed. Ralph says, thanks goes to Kirk for getting the theme and title from Stephen King's The Stand. Kirk is fully unleashed for the first time, no more following Mustaine's lead, so to speak, and his soloing on this song kicks ass. Lars' drumming is improved through lessons. Cliff is phenomenal. Deep Purple Podcast, who I'll give a big shout out to, great podcast, say fantastic track, showing off some of that legacy Mustaine with the new style that they were developing. Triton says, once the intro punches you in the face, you're on a ride for an epic journey. The middle section followed by Kirk's solo might be my favourite moment in the band's entire discography. It's just so melodic and overwhelming. Great song for sure. John saying gold, one of the many, many Kirk solos that are way better than The Unforgiven. And Empty Eye finally saying so good. Like someone else said, probably the first real sign of the band maturing musically and lyrically from the play fast, rock out philosophy on Kill 'Em All. Cliff rocks the hell out of this song, especially live. I mean, it goes without saying, Todd, that everyone adores Ride the Lightning.
Yeah, as well they should. I think it's probably my favorite Metallica album. When you look at the monsters that are on here, I mean, even Fight Fire is a great song. You got this one. You got Bells, which is just ridiculous. You got Fade to Black, which is just an all-time classic. Creeping Death, and one of my favorite pieces of music of all time, Call of Cthulhu. Yeah. This is a monster album.
It is an incredible record. Yeah, it's pretty much a masterpiece. Like I don't dislike Escape and Trapped Under Ice. I mean, we've covered Escape quite a while ago. Trapped Under Ice is coming up. I don't think they're filler tracks or anything like that. But there's so many classics that endear to this day, aren't they, with Metallica fans? Into Bells. Now, this is, one of these songs, really, from Metallica. I think if you ask any fan to rank their top 5, I'd be very surprised if it wasn't in the top 5. I just think the quality shines through. I think it's fantastic in so many ways. It's so anthemic and so memorable, so original. It's been played 1,418 times. It was first played live in August 3rd, 1984 in New York. It was last played 2 days ago, me recording this, March 31st, 2018 in Vienna, Austria. So we begin with that ominous tolling of the bell. And I love the ambience it creates. I love that we get 2 tolls before that straight double punch in the guitar, the da-da, da-da, boom, which is so incredibly simple, but matched with, Cliff living underneath it, doing the do-do-do-do-do-do. It's not just that phrasing that he gets, it's the sort of Cthulhu-esque warbling that's happening. So you're having these hard, brash chords. You're having this interesting melody line paired with a sort of, spaced out, monstrous sort of element, this, ethereal burble that Cliff is conjuring, and there's the bell there as well. It really gives a sense of dread, a sense of excitement. And Metallica are such a contrarian band because I was aware of this title, obviously, as a fan. And I remember I was on Amazon, maybe I was like 13, 14 or something, sort of, I studied English at university, so I was sort of getting into literature slowly around that age. And I wanted to read some Hemingway. I was aware that Hemingway was this author you got to read, incredible, And I'd heard as well that he had a very pared down writing style, which sort of, appeals to me deeply. So I saw it on Amazon. I was like, For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. And I was like, holy, being ignorant, I thought he took the title from them, sort of thing. Didn't really understand that this was this, novel of, I haven't read it for many years. I remember reading it at the time and not really getting it, to be honest. I read it on holiday in Turkey, and I think I went to other graphic novels in the time being. But if I remember correctly, it's like a novel of doomed passion amid political upheaval in the Spanish Civil War. So, it's
interesting subject matter, and whilst the lyrics aren't exactly incredibly faithful, and maybe if you just gave the lyrics to a Hemingway scholar, he wouldn't be like, oh god, this is written, it wouldn't be that obvious, but still, it's taken the inspiration from that, and it just plays into that nature of Metallica, how they're always very arch to taste. Like, this is 1984, this is when Jump and Hot for Teacher are on the charts, and I know there was a lot of metal around at this time, but even the metal that was around this time was maybe a bit more stereotypical, going for your satanic worship, or sort of pussy pursuit. Using this as well just makes the energy different, makes the atmosphere so much stronger and so much more vivid. And this song is very much like a Frankenstein. It just has so much quality. Every section I think is almost better than the rest. So we have this opening section where the song sort of breaks open and really gets you into this world, and then we have something which, I don't know, normally in rock, when bands do this, I find it just, I don't like it. I think it's a boring technique. I think it's a waste of time in a song where you get the bassist to play the upcoming riff with the guitars doing something over top and then the guitars join in. But I think here it is undeniably incredible when Cliff is doing that dung 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 dung, and when the guitar goes on, the chunkiness of it. Oh my god, you can barely get your teeth around that thing. It's just marvelous, really. And that descent as well, like, which is harder to play than you think, AJ, because you have to move quick with all your hands on the fretboard without it sounding kind of scratchy, and but obviously these guys are old pros at this. And then moving from that section, the song takes a little break, and the song has lots of pauses, it has lots of breaths, it understands silence. Like, okay, there is some chugging with a da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, but it's not that fast, it's not that thrashy. You would put this song maybe on a sort of Iron Maiden sort of almost new wave of British heavy metal layer, just because it's quite operatic, both in its subject matter and the way that it's put together. Then we get to the solo break, and you imagine if this was on Kill 'Em All, Kirk would have just done some Mixolydian mayhem. He would have just spazzed all over this song. But no, it's a very, very basic, 6-note, it's a mantra almost. It does not change at all, but it's way more gripping than if he was to just, go up and down the fretboard, And what I love about this is that Hetfield is creating a fertile backdrop with those chords, which are just essentially the verse chords. We're getting a lot of teases in this intro section. Similarly, the sort of final riff that will lead us to the first verse is, of course, the chorus riff as well. And yeah, it's a long section. All in all, I think it's about 2 minutes or so before we get any vocals. It's essentially sort of an instrumental going into the main song. And yeah, I just, again, the sort of the changes here mean that the Kirk's lead is never boring. It never feels redundant. There's always something going on, the relationship between the two things, and it just has this march. And that bell is also ever present in the background. Sometimes you forget about it because there's other stuff going on, but it's always there, tolling for ye. And then around the 1:50 mark, we get into another classic riff. I remember learning this riff on guitar when I was very young. The da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. It's quite easy. Your fingers go in obvious places. Open, open 3, open, open 5. And I think the move to the C power chord, being the sort of the first root note on the A string, it's very tasteful, and it just moves you into this song, and it's such an escalation. It's just continuing. And then we get into the verse itself, where James sounds absolutely fantastic. I think, his vocals are terrific. His vocals aren't quite in that sort of, Black Album commanding frontman era, but they are leaps and bounds from Kill 'Em All, both for the reverb that's been drained off the track, but just for the sense of this sort of Roman general before his troops that he has as well. And lyrics are, running through the endless grey, constantly asking questions, why, who's to say, stiffened wounds test their pride, and the way the song will just drop as well after certain lines to later gauge their true meaning. I was reading an excellent book, Metallica, the Music and the Mayhem, by Malcolm Dome and Mick Wall, who are of course sort of legendary authors, rock authors, Kerrang journalists, etc. And it's essentially sort of Alphabetallica in book form, where they just go through every song and give a few paragraphs of opinion. And it's always well written, always interesting. And I was looking through the Bell's submission just before we went on, and they pull a lot of Morricone influence in here, which I can definitely see. And here's what they say: For whom the bell tolls, there were elements of Morricone's style beginning to creep into their own music. The time changes, the almost gothic acoustic sweeps. This is to be more heavily developed on later albums, and the band were even to sample one of Morricone's themes. According to Lars, it was James who had a particular fascination with the Italian master and pushed the band in this direction. See, I would have thought that would have been Cliff, but it's interesting it was James. Whatever, it made a pleasant change from just taking influences from the like of Iron Maiden, Motorhead and Diamond Head, however worthy these bands might have been. I agree, Mick or Malcolm, whoever wrote that, I definitely agree. And it does have, I mean, you obviously the sort of the landscape of the novel plays a lot into this, and when you're sort of aware where it's coming from, this sort of, the senseless combat that's going on, the blood-soaked fields, it just makes it all more irresistible. And then we get into the chorus as well, which, I mean, the title doesn't necessarily seem like the easiest thing to sing, like, but I guess because it's those single syllables, for whom the bell tolls, it's, how can you not sing time marching on as well, and you get this pull throughout the song, this sense of momentum that you really can't avoid. Because live, this is a staple. There's various changes that happen live. For instance, in the beginning solo, Clark always plays a... It's kind of hard for me to sing in comparison there. But if you listen to him, he always goes a bit higher. He always plays a bit of harmonic lines in there just to make it a little bit more intriguing. And then, let's talk about, say, S&M or Neems or pretty much any other Metallica concert. Everyone sings For Whom the Bell Tolls back to James. I remember especially the version on S&M, as I'm sure most people have heard. It is so exciting to hear that. The crowd just roar it out as well. And James always going, absolutely, and all that sort of stuff. So, the synergy is intangible. And James has such conviction here. He's not singing for much. There's 2 verses, 2 choruses. The majority of the song, as I say, is taken up mostly by the instruments doing what they do. When he sings "Take a Look to the Sky Just Before You Die," which is like one of the GOAT opening lines to a verse, you really do believe it. And Paul Brannigan and Ian Winwood, Paul I mentioned before, who came on the show, they mention this in Birth, School, Metallica, Death, which is another fantastic song, saying, quote, "The same might have been said for Whom the Bell Tolls, a tale of medieval men fighting to the death over a patch of land, a sentiment accompanied by music of such quality that to this day remains a particular favourite of Metallica's audiences and Metallica's audience and a staple of the group's live set. It is, though, somehow more than magisterial music that rescues a lyric. It is, though, somehow more than magisterial music that rescues a lyric that might have been both brittle and daft. Here, the notion that James Hetfield has established an emotional connection between himself and the characters in the song is a difficult one to shake." I should say as well, I love the harmonies, guitar solos, bum, bum. But yeah, it just, again, sort of playing off that intro thing that Kirk does. There isn't really a solo on this song. I suppose you could argue the sort of noise at the end sort of fills that niche there. But yeah, love that moment as well. I guess my only criticism of this song, and don't get me wrong, this is like one of my all-time favourite songs by the band, and I can't really say anything bad about it. I think it's a stone cold classic. It's just a certain repetition of words that bothers me only slightly. So this happens in the second verse where he says, "black and raw, massive roar." We don't need raw twice within 2 syllables of each other. Maybe this is me just being a pedant. This is me being a wannabe poet, for example. But it's more noticeable on the final line. "Now they see what will be, blinded eyes to see." And again, I'm not too much of a fan of repeating C there, but this is so minor. Like, I'm not even going to take a point away for that. I'm just sort of pointing it out. What do you think about this? Let us know in the comments. Is that a problem for you? It's not really a problem for me, to be honest, but I just noticed it. It's a sort of show where we share little things that we, think about these songs we love. So, yeah. And then the song kind of cracks open, as I've said a lot on this show, whenever we talk about it on a solo thing. And I love seeing this live as well, because it's always a bit different here. It feels like a fault line in this sort of, battle land has cracked, and, Kirk's demonic warblings are like some foreign death cackles that boom, boom, boom. It feels so final, feels so Sabbath. And, I just can't get enough of this. I love that the last 30 seconds is just this sort of, just devilish noise, and then the first 2 minutes are this instrumental movement, and then we get the song in the middle. And all in all, time flies when I listen to this song. I actually thought this song was shorter than it was. I thought it was about 4 minutes, actually 5 minutes 10, and it just, it goes and goes and goes. Arguably the song ends around 4 minutes or so, because we just get the sort of playing here and there. But yeah, For Whom the Bell Tolls. What more can I say about this track? Please let us know down below what you think of this song, what your impressions are of this song. To me, it's one of the greatest songs ever written. I think a lot of people are in that boat as well. One final quote, because obviously it has been me on my own here. I hope that hasn't been too annoying for you guys. Is from Mick Wall. Mick Wall's book, Enter Night. Mick Wall, who I invited on the show, actually, and he said no thanks, which is fair enough, He's a very busy man. But it would have been great to get him on. And I want to, again, say, no hard feelings, Mick, because I think Enter Night is probably the best book I've read on Metallica. It's a very sort of by the book. It's not like Ian Winwood and Paul Brannigan, where they're a bit more sort of postmodern about it and they analyse the band within sort of, budget and influence. This is more just a straight up, he knows the band so well, Mick, and goes through it. I am going to do a show, I should say, in the future on books about Metallica. I mean, I was on Metal at Your Podcast. We did cover Back to the Front. That was a really fun episode. Shout out those guys every time for letting me come on the show. But I would like to do a sort of, look back. There's so many books, though. Like, I think I own a lot. I actually put on my Instagram, Read the Lightning was the caption. Aren't I so clever? And I'll probably have about 15 books on Metallica when I started the podcast. Just one a bit of a binge buy. But the problem is you buy these books and you get what you suggested in Amazon. And then there's like loads that I don't own. Joel McIver, I think, did one, and Justice for All. Let us know what are some good Metallica books as well. Get in touch with me, metallicapod@gmail.com, if you know some good books. But in Mick Wall's book, I see talking about bells in the studio. After the extra time spent getting the guitar and drums right, it was a relief for Rasmussen to discover that most of the songs were already worked out. They had really rehearsed and arranged the demos, so they were pretty set. The only song they hadn't finished yet was one of the album's centerpieces, For Whom the Bell Tolls. We had one day where they kind of jammed it and finished. The bell in question was actually provided by the striking of an anvil. We put it on a back stairs when we recorded it. That was ridiculous, it weighed a ton, but Lars hit it with a metal bar and it sounded really good. That was before samplers, so we had to just make our own sounds. The back stairs was also where they eventually placed Lars's drum kit, right on the other side of the door. There's actually an apartment there now, so someone's sitting in the living room watching the telly in the spot where Lars played the drums. I think someone emailed me, get in touch with me. Someone did say that he owns the studio or the apartment or something like that, and we've been meaning to do an episode, so... We're talking about Fade to Black, and for me, I don't know about yourself, it transcends my favourite Metallica song. It goes straight up into my favourite piece of music ever.
I mean, there's so much with Fade to Black they get into. I mean, this is what blows my mind about this song. This was written and composed by 20-year-old kids.
Yeah, yeah.
And as far as how it fits into the overall Metallica picture, as far as the Metallica ballad, they got it right the first time with the song. Every song, to me, is them just trying to recreate Fade to Black. I mean, they go in different directions with Sanitarium and One and The Day That Never Comes, but I mean, they got it right the first time, if you ask me. You can't get better than this.
Yeah. It is unbelievably anthemic. It is the epitome of Metallica to me, to a certain extent. It is always one of those touchstones, along with songs like Orion as well, that are just these songs that I cannot get enough of, that will always do it for me as well. Whenever I listen to it, similar to the end of Night Train by Guns N' Roses, which incredible song. I love Guns N' Roses. Someone out there listening to Alphabetallica, you want to start a podcast, please start a Guns N' Roses podcast. Are you kidding me? Why hasn't that happened yet? There's 200 Metallica podcasts. Someone needs to stretch out. And when you do the Night Train episode, please have me on as a guest, because I am crazy about the closing section of that song. I think it's irresistible, and I think Fade to Black's on that same par for me, Nick, in just being a classic.
Yeah, but you know what's so ironic about this song? This song was actually very, very controversial. I mean, let's go back 34 years to March 1984.
Glory days.
Yeah, you're an OG, in Lars' term, you're an OG thrash rager, right?
Yeah.
So it's you got Metallica on the forefront, you got Slayer, you got Anthrax, Megadeth at its embryonic stages, you got Overkill, you got Exodus, you got Testament, you've got, Death Angel.
Murder in the Front Row, I think, was written about that era, crazy.
Yeah. So, so you can imagine, at this time, you're, a teenager, you got Kill 'Em All, you got this awesome album, you kind of seen Metallica live once or twice, and they played, they played a few songs from Ride before it came out. So, they played Fight Fire with Fire, they played Creeping Death, they played Call of Cthulhu, they played Ride the Lightning.
Right.
So, you're all stoked up about this album, and then when it drops in the summer of 1984, and you take the record, out of the album sleeve, out of the dust cover, you put it on the record player, you put the needle down on track 1, Fight Fire Fire, and you get this acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And it's a shock. You're like, what is this? And then it, obviously goes into 1,000 miles an hour. So you're like, that's cool. So then you go through Ride the Lightning, For Whom the Bell Tolls, and then you get to track 4 on side A, which is Fade to Black. Again, starts off with that kind of weird ambient keyboard thing. Then you get the acoustic guitar. You're like, okay, so they fooled me with, Fight Fire Fire. We're going to get this awesome song, and it never really takes off in that direction. So I don't know, if you go back 34 years and you listen to that, and that's why a lot of these older, thrash fans at the time hated Ride the Lightning because of Fade to Black, because they sold out. They put a ballad on a record. God forbid you branch out. So, and a lot of fans probably, they jumped off the Metallica train in 1984. So pre-Black Album, pre-Load, Saint Anger, 1984. Ride the Lightning, Tom. Probably the most important Metallica record.
Come on.
They jumped off the train because of Fade to Black. It blows my mind. It's kind of like, and I'm going to flip the script a little bit. I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
So, in terms from Kill 'Em All to Ride the Lightning, like the progression of the band and the change in them, do you think that's more comparable to like Metallica going from Justice to the Black Album, or the Black Album to Load?
Oh, no, I don't think they're self-reinventions. I don't think they're paradigm shifting. I think they made sense, Justice into Black Album, a lot of the themes are carried across. Lyrically, It's James's sort of brain there, and, I think, some of the changes are familiar. And Fade to Black really escapes its era for me. It's timeless. You talk about that intro. I love the sort of ethereal backdrop to it. And the sound of the guitars sound excellent here. Really well recorded, really bright, and I'm crazy about Kirk's opening solo. I think it's one of Kirk's crowning moments as a guitar player in Metallica.
Oh yeah, if you're a guitar player, I can't play anything worth a shit. But I love that acoustic. And I'm reading actually something about like James was writing that part, in New Jersey, ironically,
sure.
And he was saying how much of a pain in the ass it was to record that part, because you can hear every note on the acoustic, like every bit, every hand movement, all the strings. So for them to do that, took some guts to do. And that opening little guitar solo from Kirk, the way the song kind of builds and builds and builds, and then it gets into the verse part. Just such a beautiful song. And what's funny too, if you listen to just the isolated guitar tracks, it sounds very upbeat.
Right.
But then if you put it in the rhythm section, you put in the bass, you put in the drums, and then you put obviously the lyrics on top of all that, it becomes a whole other beast within itself. But the song is just so beautiful, even though it is about suicide. But it's so beautiful of a song, and just and people have kind of cracked on it in the past few years of it was written about it's about suicide, but its backstory is when their gear got stolen in Boston back in January of '84.
Right.
But and people are now maybe looking back 34 years later going, well, that's kind of silly. But if you look at this band of 20-year-old kids who have just made it, they just have an album out, they're on tour, this is their life. So if their gear gets stolen, it might have been the end of their career.
Sure.
So they took that, James took those, dark feelings, and they, put them into the song. And also what's interesting about this song is there's no chorus.
Yeah, there's sort of a riff chorus, but no sort of vocal backing. You're right. Which is just another part of this endless combo of awesome parts of this song. Like, you're talking about that intro solo that builds up into the main marching movement. Such a fantastic riff in of itself, and then for it to essentially be a verse riff that James is singing over. It has a secondary function, but it's still really compelling. His slide that he does as well, dun dun. There's lots of moments in this song that, listening to them, I appreciate you say you don't play guitar, but for me it was quite a silly move, really. But when when I learned guitar and started playing these songs, you realize how simple some of these parts are. Like towards the end, he has a da-da-dun, 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 da-da-dun,
Dun-dun-dun-dun.
you know, and you play that, and it's just a linear descent on the A string, and it's kind of like, oh, of course it is. You listen to it, you're like, yeah, it is, of course. But for some reason, you envision something maybe a little more difficult, a little more accomplished. But that is the spirit of Metallica. They just strip these things down to their bare essentials, and they are compelling in of themselves. One of the things I love about this song, Nick, are the lyrics. I think they're incredibly concise. They don't give a syllable away, and you know, all of them are very memorable, very quotable, and very effective when they lead to the continuing verses and choruses.
Yeah, it flows very well, and just it flows well, and just some of the things like growing darkness, taking dawn.
Right,
what a great line that is.
Yes.
Like, emptiness is filling me to the point of agony. You know, I was me, but now he's gone. I mean,
I was me, but now he's gone. Is deep. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like, I'm looking at this going, like, this is James at just a young kid, you know, writing these really deep lyrics about something, you know, about gear being stolen, essentially, you know, at its core. But it's just, you said, like, it's economy of words, syllables, nothing is wasted. Everything flows so well together. It tells a concise story from the beginning to the end. And even like the last two lines, like, yesterday seems as though it never existed. Death greets me warm. Now I will just say goodbye. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Powerful.
That gives you chill. Yeah, and even just reading it now, I'm like, and even the line before that, no one but me can save myself, but it's too late. Now I can't think like I should even try. Like, wow.
But it's not only the writing, which is fantastic, it's the delivery, but it's too late, you know.
Yeah.
Just, oh man, it just so, I can't get enough of it, really. And I think this song is just full of builds and releases that are fantastic. We have the intro, which is that, you know, Kirk's fantastic opening solo leading into the acoustic verse riff, and then at the end, you know, we have James singing over it, and then when the solo just erupts at the end of the song, I want to hark back to Night Train. As I said, I love rock songs that end with huge guitar solos, and that's just how they end. Like, it's the best way to end a song, Nick.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean this. Oh yeah. I mean, what is it? The trash canning it? They're just going for it, and that solo kicks in, and you got Lars on the double bass, and you know, Cliff and James just doing their little parts, which adds so much to the back end of that song. Because when you listen to it, it's like it's just little things, just little notes here and there, but it adds so much dimension to that ending section of that song that just takes it to a whole other level. Outside of that amazing Kirk solo, outside of the double bass, I mean, start to end. I mean, For Whom the Bell Tolls is my favorite song on Ride the Lightning, but I don't know if it's the best song on the album. Fade to Black is a very, very, very strong contender for that. I mean, again, as far as their ballads, as far as like the Metallica ballads where it starts off soft and then ends hard, this is it. Yeah. Everything else is just they're catching up to this.
Yeah. I mean, would you rank this as number one Metallica ballads in their own canon?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it better than one.
Yeah, because one has like. I don't know if it's because of the production. It seems at times when they go from the soft to the hard, like it's a pretty harsh transition.
Sure.
And I mean, I don't know, again, if that's because of the production. It's very dry, you know, but it just, this song just, this and Sanitarium flow very well together, but I gotta put Fade on top.
Better than Day That Never Comes?
And Tom.
I like that song. A lot of people rag on that song. I think it's a good song.
And again, Day. I mean,
great ending. Like Fade to Black. Great ending.
Like Fade to Black. I mean, basically, when Day came out, it's like, well, Fade to Black and one had a baby, and here it is. And I love Day That Never Comes. In fact, I would personal preference probably put Day on top as far as my personal preference. But like looking at it from a academic point of view, you know, removing the favoritism, Fade's got to be it. Sure. Because without Fade, you don't have one. You don't have Sanitarium. You don't have Day. But even still, like, this song just does everything that those songs do, and it got it right the first time, you know.
Yeah, you're right, and I agree. This is actually my favourite as well. As I said before, it's one of my all-time favourite songs. It's an absolutely crushing song. You know, I really can't get enough of it. I love Kirk's second lead break as well, which has a more smoke-like, you know, kind of at this world kind of vibe to it that I really, really like. I actually remember the first time I heard this song, and I think this song was responsible for getting me into the band inadvertently. I was burning CDs, and I made this weird CD, and me and my dad listened to it, and it was like Steve Vai basically, and I remember it had its song Brother, which is like a Fire Garden, I think that's off, and that was there, and then this song Creepy Death was there as well, and then Fade to Black was there, and I do remember hearing it and just being so impressed by it. It felt lived in. It felt like I'd heard it my entire life, but I was just hearing it now. You know, it had just had this not in a bad way at all, predictable quality. Like I knew how great it was instantly, and the band do as well, Nick. It's been played a total of 1,162 times.
Yes, which I've seen 4 of those 1,162 times. And actually, leading up to this, I've been watching a lot of the different versions of the song played live throughout the years because they've made some modifications along the way. I have to say, as far as favorite performances live, as far as me seeing them personally, I mean, it's tough. In person, but as far as all the documentary stuff, the live Seattle performance is amazing. I'm not a fan of the Black Album version or era of the song live, because I think James is trying to oversing it, if it makes sense.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure about it, but the load era, James's voice and the down tuning of the guitars, it sounded really good. And in fact, one of my favorite versions, which is kind of sad in a way, is the last time that they played this song with Jason being an official member of the band on the VH1 My Music Awards, which was November 20th, 2000.
Right.
And that was actually a rare treat to see them play Fade to Black live on TV, because when they're playing on TV, it's Enter Sandman or it's Fuel or The Memory Remains or whatever the single is at that moment. But the fans got, if I remember correctly, because it's been 18 years or so, the fans got to choose what song the band played live, and they were playing outside, and it was a makeshift parking lot, and they played Fade to Black, and it wasn't technically a really good performance, but emotionally, man, it kicked ass, and it's kind of sad and fitting in a way. It was Jason's last song with them, as an official member of the band.
Wow. Yeah, I recall it now that you say. Yeah, I can sort of see it on a darkened lot and cranes, and
yes.
I remember the Neems performance of this is very good.
Yeah,
that's an awesome concert altogether. I love that concert.
Yeah, that's great too. And also too, have you seen? So, what's your take on James playing the acoustic bit electric or acoustic live? What's your take on that?
I don't mind that. What I do mind is him singing to the. I know the crowd do it at the end, but I kind of like to just give Kirk that stage.
Yeah, I mean,
it's minor.
Yeah, it's minor. I mean, he gets it's that crowd involvement. I mean, I've seen them play it both ways, and with them playing it acoustic, with it James playing the intro acoustically, at first was wow, that's pretty cool. But I don't know, it just feels a little. I don't want to say hollow, but it doesn't have the same strength that the electric intro does.
Sure.
And I guess I'm used to with the album version having that kind of keyboard sound behind the acoustic to kind of boost it up a little bit. But I mean, either way, the song kicks ass. So, I mean, they could play it any way they want. They could play it on banjos; it'd be fine. Also, have you heard the acoustic, straight up acoustic version of the song?
Yes, on some sort of radio show, was it?
It might have been. It might have been.
But yeah, someone could correct us in the comments, I'm sure. But
yeah, someone's gonna be typing "God damn you, Metallica! Excuse me, nerds. It was played in 1998. I just felt all right. Yeah, I get it. I don't have the notes in front of me, but it was okay. Again, I liked how in that era, how James sung the song and how he enunciated, some of the words, versus like I said, like 91, 93, maybe good. Again, he blew his voice out and he's trying to protect it. It didn't have the same feeling to it, but like 96 to 99, 2000, I felt like he sung it really well and didn't have like any. It felt like he got behind the emotion of the song. Versus the earlier times they played the song from like 85 to about 87, like they were almost nervous playing it because the first time they played it was February 8th, 1985, and the album came out July 27th, 1984. So they waited a bit to play this song, right. And they did the same thing with Nothing Else Matters. Like they didn't play that song live right away.
Okay,
they waited a little bit. So. I don't know what they were waiting for with playing the song live. Maybe they had, run through it a few times and make sure they got all the parts right. But it's a live staple. I mean, they can probably play it through their sleep if they wanted to.
Yeah, it's a remarkable track, really. I love the gear shift. Sort of 3 minutes to go. The riff that changes everything, giving birth to that solo. Yeah, can't get enough of this song. It is classic Metallica. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir. If you're listening to this, you know how fucking incredible this song is, man. Any closing thoughts on Fade to Black?
Let's see. I mean, there's, like I said, a lot of history tied to it. It's also, unfortunately, the song where James burned himself in Montreal.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of not so nice. Yeah, but what's also interesting too is like when someone passes away, James will dedicate the song to them, which I find kind of odd because the
kind of
song's
insulting.
Yeah, because when Ronnie James Dio passed away, he dedicated the song to him. When Chris Cornell passed away, he dedicated the song to him. Like in the Rasputin version, where on the Hardwired third disc. He says, like, right in that break, right before the solo, like, can you hear us, Cliff? I'm like, this song's about suicide. It's not. I mean, it's like, I get the sentiment to it, but I'm like, it's not what it's really about. But I'm like, you know what? I'm not telling James Hetfield what the song's about, what he could say and what he could not say about it. Yeah, but I do. I found that kind of interesting.
So, today we're doing Trapped Under Ice and always try and get as much research as possible on the song. And I discovered, if you Google Trapped Under Ice, Metallica are obviously top. It's fucking Metallica. They dominate all the SEO rankings, stuff like that. But there's a big band from Baltimore, a hardcore band called Trapped Under Ice. Were you aware of this?
I was not, actually. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. They've got quite a big
I suppose
following.
It doesn't surprise me, that much, just because as influential as Metallica are, and I mean, Trapped Under Ice is something, I suppose it's kind of a common phrase.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did not know that prior to this.
Yeah, I couldn't work out whether it was exactly ripped from Metallica or they were just kind of, they had a lot of kind of Arctic imprisonment ideas early on or something, and it was just a coincidence. But they're named that, and it got me into a little bit of a Wikipedia hole. I found this great article where bands named after songs or bands named after lyrics in songs, and there's so many of them. Like, obviously, there's a Jet named after the Wings song. Mr. Big, who are one of my favourite bands, are named after the Free song Mr. Big. Firehouse, apparently after the Kiss song. Communist Daughter, there's a band called Communist Daughter after the Neutral Milk Hotel. I don't really know why I'm putting this into the podcast, but it was just kind of an interesting thing to think about,
Oh yeah, I've definitely gone down the wiki and or internet rabbit holes before, where I start in one place and just end up someplace completely different. Like, what the heck? How did I get here?
So, Trapped Under Ice, as I say, it's a much neglected track. It's no one's ever going to put it on first when they rip out Ride the Lightning and put it on a turntable or whatever. People on Twitter have been saying they skip it often. Like, in general, to you, where does this sit on the record? Obviously, it's not kind of on par with a Cthulhu or Fade to Black, but do you think it fits overall in quality? Or?
So, for the most part, yes. And when I was younger, this was actually my one of my favorite songs on Ride the Lightning because it was so fast. It was, that was sort of what I was into in high school, was the up-tempo, the really thrash stuff. But the song is kind of interesting to me in how kind of not that interesting it is in some ways. And I don't mean that... That sounds a lot worse than I mean it to sound, but what I mean is, the two songs that were kind of written or started on Ride the Lightning back when Dave Mustaine was in the band were, of course, Ride the Lightning and Cthulhu. Mm-hmm. If you had asked me to, with not knowing that going in beforehand, kind of pick out one song on this album that would have been from kind of the Kill 'Em All era or pre-Kill 'Em All, I would have guessed this one. I would have guessed Trapped Under Ice. And there are a couple reasons for this, really. But the first one is it's, it fits in a lot with kind of the up-tempo, thrashy style of Kill 'Em All, where they, Kill 'Em All is great, but it's clearly their first album, and you can kind of tell. Mm-hmm. A lot of the lyrics are kind of just sort of vague metal horror, or we're macho metal guys who rock, that kind of thing. And so lyrically, most of Ride the Lightning, they're still, very metal horror, but there's a bit more kind of thought, and you can tell they're starting to put a bit more maturity into the lyrics and the subject matter. Like Fight Fire with Fire is about nuclear Armageddon. You got Creeping Death, which is about biblical plagues. For Whom the Bell Tolls, the horrors of war, and so on and so on. And then you have Trapped Under Ice, which is about a dude who's trapped under ice.
Yeah. I mean, there is a metaphor there.
Oh, it's horrifying. It's cool. Okay, fair.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, there is obviously a message there, but it is literally about a guy trapped under ice. And I like what you're saying about Kill 'Em All as well, because, going from Kill 'Em All to Ride is such a quantum leap. You almost feel like there should realistically be an album in between that for them to get to Fade to Black from Motor Breath. And you could hear a song like Trapped Under Ice on that, because, there are a lot of the, ignore the pun, trappings of Kill 'Em All, a lot of the sort of headbanging ideas, and, a bit of the sort of dunderheaded lyricism and stuff like that. But then again, there are some really cool sections and breaks and movements going forward. But we open with these regressive retreating chords. They're almost kind of glacial to me. And then there's kind of an odd sound which shows a step forward sonically. Sounds a bit like George Lucas's THX warming up. That kind of odd secondary sound in the top as the riff kicks. It's like a wah. It's kind of like a building thing.
Yes. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I think it's just before, the first big solo that comes in. Or no, it's just before, the song really kicks off.
Yeah, just before the riff sort of kicks in, and then Cliff's underneath with a kind of gravelly sloshing, and, Kirk's got these kind of wide chords above. And then we get into the solo that you mentioned. There are 3 of these solo breaks here. I mean, they're very early 80s, aren't they? They're not exactly narrative or lyrical. They're a bit flashy. Not that there aren't notes here and sequences that I do like, but there's not much food for thought, I suppose. They're just doing their job to get you excited early in the song.
Right, yeah, and they do that job very well. Like I said, this was one of my favorite songs on the album when I was younger. I don't know if I'd say that now. If you ask me now, I would probably say Cthulhu, actually, because, as we mentioned on the previous episode, I'm a Cliff Burton guy, so... But they do their job. They do it well. You can kind of see this is sort of I think one of the first places where you can kind of hear the upcoming glimpses of late period Kirk Hammett, where he's just doing the wow thing there. But he doesn't really overdo it. And I agree with you. There are places, especially near the end of the first solo, where kind of the guitar tone is kind of that screechy 80s almost keyboard guitar tone. You can hear something similar, and actually there's a video game series, I don't know if you're familiar with it, the East series.
No, I'm not.
Okay. It's more popular now than it actually was, at least in the US here. But there's one song, and it's from specifically the TurboGrafx CD version of the game, or maybe the PC Engine CD. I don't know which one it's called in Europe. But anyway, if you look up that version of the song, and the song is called... what's the song? I believe it's called something like Tower of the Shadow of Death is the song. It's a song that plays in a tower in the game, and in the PC CD version of it, there's a guitar solo tone that the whole thing is done on like keyboards and things, but you can hear kind of the very screechy tone that reminds me of the end of this solo of Trapped Under Ice here. So yeah, but the solos themselves, I like them a lot for what they are, but you're right, they are kind of very of their time. I don't know if this is when Kirk had started taking lessons from Joe Satriani or not, but you can kind of tell.
Yeah. I mean, and look, there's so much like classic Kirk throughout this album in terms of his solos, like, you know, the Creeping Death solo, the final Fade to Black solo, like, you know, his work on Ride, like, just a spoil of riches. And here it's just slightly redundant and kind of just get kind of Guitar Hero theatrics that don't really do anything for me. As we get into the first solo, James is riffing underneath, and that becomes the verse riff. And this is a real sledgehammer kind of bit of thrash meat here, isn't it? Like, you can really set your watch to this.
Yeah, it is. And one of the more interesting things about this is that the song, especially the verses, they're in kind of a different, almost higher key than a lot of Metallica songs, even the thrash stuff. Like, it all kind of hovers around, I want to say G. Like, you know, as opposed to, you know, like Blackened, which is all around E.
Yeah.
And, you know, Battery, etc., etc. So yeah, you have the verse riff, and then you have the verses themselves, where you know, James isn't doing quite as much of the Kill 'Em All sort of shriek, but it's still there a little bit.
Yeah, it's still slightly prepubescent. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, probably in part just because it is such a high key.
Yeah, and also it's just so young as well. Like, you know, okay.
There's also that.
Yeah. I think he was like 19 though. To be, I think. Disclaimer: James had gone through puberty by Ride the Lightning. I don't know if Kirk had yet, but I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure James had. And there's lots of gang vocals in this track throughout, which Metallica employ here and there. You know, we just covered Through the Never, which pops up in that song as well. The freezing, you know, screaming, like that sort of stuff. Like, that's just kind of like built for the stage, isn't it? Although, ironically, they haven't really played this song live very much, 21 times total.
Oh yeah, I was actually kind of curious about that. I didn't, unlike Prince Charming, I did not look that one up beforehand. And I was kind of curious how much they had or had not played it live. I would have figured they would have, just because it only being on their second album, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, just sort of by default, there's probably going to be, you know, some selections, just because with only 2 albums out, there's not a whole lot to choose from set list wise.
Yeah, you would think that, wouldn't you? Yeah, the chronology is interesting. So yeah, 21 times.
Yeah.
Twice they played it in 84, back to back, November 17th, 18th. That was in Belgium and France. And then there was a 16-year gap where it came out for one concert in Chicago, 2000. Then it came out 4 years later for Illinois, and then it kind of became part of like the World Magnetic Tour, and that's where it got all its airings out. And I think it was ended at the Orion Music Festival as well. But yeah, since then they haven't popped it out. And there is a weird performance. There's a few performances online. I watched the Glasgow performance this morning, and you know, I don't want to accuse James of being racist, but essentially the song ends and he says, "Trapped under ice for you, special price for you," and he puts on like a really exaggerated Chinese accent. I'll put I mean, I know, Mark, you won't be able to hear it, but I'll put the clip here for our listeners, and maybe you can consult afterwards.
Hey! Trapped under ice for you, special price for you. Thank you, Glasgow.
Yeah, I sort of played it to my girlfriend this morning. I was like, is this a bit like stereotypical? I don't really know. Like, you know, whatever. James in the moment, he wanted to dip into his Oriental bag. I don't really know why, but he did. I don't know why, especially with Trapped Under Ice, Trapped Under Rice, I guess. I don't really know where he's going with that. But yeah, you know, the song itself has these gang vocal parts, and it has kind of probably my highlight of the song is after the second chorus, where there's lots of chugging, there's lots of riffs, reminds me a little bit of Death Magnetic and all the connective tissue that moves forward. And then we get into the bridge, which is kind of a bit like a Creeping Death. It kind of has a riff that breathes and allows, you know, the scream from my soul, fate mystify, that idea. Like, what do you make of that whole section?
Yeah, I like that section a lot as well. And I think that's, in as much as there is kind of a musical evolution present in this song, it's in that bridge. The bridge is a little bit more melodic than the rest of the song. You have, like you said, the sort of creeping death, but the chanting vocals and the gang vocals, like you were saying earlier. That scream from my soul, fate mystified, hell forevermore. Yeah, it's fairly early here still, so I can't really chant it out, but you know, but yeah, I like that a lot. And then just kind of the bridge riff, like I said, that's a little bit more melodic, kind of actually resolves to somewhere, resolves da 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 da.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
It's one of the highlights of the song.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. And like, people who skip this song, like, look, I know it's not like, you know, the top of the league table when it comes to Metallica or anything, but it's still a fantastic early thrash song from them. It's pretty breathless, and it's over quite quickly, but stuffed with ideas.
Yeah, it's like you said, not one of the top tier kind of thrash era Metallica songs, but that just tells you how good the top tier actually is, that, you know, you can say that about this song, because, you know, I definitely still love this song, even if it's not one of my favorites on Ride the Lightning. That's just because the rest of Ride the Lightning is so good that, you know, kind of by default, something has to be at or near the bottom. And like you said, some of the, you know, even though it's basically just about a dude trapped under ice, there are some, like, surprisingly, I don't know, I guess mature lyrics, like, crystallized as I lay here at rest. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have come up with crystallized. And then he says something, no release from my cryonic state.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Some
like,
good vocab. Like,
he's basically, like, probably 19 at this point. 19, 20. And, like, where's he coming up with cryonic state? Like, wow. I don't think I would have done that at 19.
And, you know, I've seen people trying to dig deeper, and obviously you can always look at every lyric as a metaphor, and you can go into the obvious direction of, like, oh, the ice is like pain and suffering and profound loneliness and alienation. I have seen some people as well, this might be anachronistic, think it's like an anti-drug song, because ice is like meth, like trapped under ice. I mean, what do you think of that?
I mean, if you really want to dig for it...
Bit of a reach, right?
Yeah, I think so. They, you know, they would... I feel like they would... I don't know if they were capable of reaching quite that far with, like, the symbolism yet.
Yeah.
You know, like, even Master of Puppets, which is obviously, you know, it's a masterpiece, Master of Puppets is, but it's obviously an anti-drug song, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that they were quite capable of going that far with the symbolism, especially with this particular song.
No. I mean, it's literally about someone trapped under ice, and that's great.
Yes.
You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's actually a cool idea. Like, you know, we all think of, like, I don't know, Captain America, for example, or a caveman or something like that, and just kind of that analogy. And I appreciate the imagery in it, and I think it's really, really cool. And it's just, you know, so many times metal songs stray into, like, girls and booze and drugs and whatever, and it's just, you know, it's kind of boring to listen to, really. It doesn't conjure any visual image to accompany the music. It's weird as well that they didn't play the song when they played in Antarctica. I don't get it.
Yes.
How did that happen?
How they managed that? I think they were asked about that at some point, and they were just like, "Yeah, we forgot. Our bad." Okay, sure.
I mean, fair enough. Like, you know, only been played 21 times. It's not something they've got easy to the fingers, so yeah, I can forgive them for that. But yeah, all in all,
not in the muscle memory.
Yeah. But you know, all in all, it's a pretty breakneck song. Again, it's kind of stuffed with a lot of cool stuff. I really like Kirk's playing throughout. What do you make of the rhythm section? Like what Cliff and Lars are doing here?
So I like some of the stuff that Lars is doing. As far as Cliff goes, from what I can tell, he's kind of just following the rhythm riff, and that may just be because, and I've sort of discussed this a little bit on Twitter and whatnot, is that, you know, And Justice for All, of course, has infamously almost no bass on it whatsoever, but even like Lightning and Puppets, the bass is mixed rather low if you're not specifically listening to it. Like if you're, you know, if it's not a song where Cliff is playing lead bass, and sometimes even on songs where he is playing lead bass, I know I've gone off on Cthulhu for this, where Cliff is just playing sick lead stuff, and if you're not listening with a decent pair of headphones, good luck hearing anything except the occasional wah pedal.
Yep.
But I feel like this song sort of falls victim to that, where he kind of gets a little lost in the shuffle there.
Yeah, it's not kind of a Kill 'Em All power trio mix, and in the intro you can hear it, as I say, coming in, but when the guitars are kind of layered on top, and it almost feels like there is this kind of this ice-like layer, this kind of frozen, impenetrable surface that you're kind of trying to hear Kirk underneath, Cliff, underneath, but yeah, it's kind of hard to make head nor tail of that. But any final thoughts on Trapped Under Ice, Mark?
So one of the interesting things about it, well, there's kind of two interesting things. One is that this is one of the two songs on the album that Cliff doesn't have a writing credit on, which that doesn't surprise me that much, because he was kind of it feels like to me he was really the driver of evolution in the band.
Sure,
and like I said,
yeah.
this is kind of the most Kill 'Em All track on the album.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then the second thing is just where it's placed on the album, kind of immediately after Fade to Black, where, kind of back in the day, Fade to Black was controversial. It was, it's Metallica doing a ballad, they've sold out. I think it's very smartly placed on the album, actually, where, well, actually, I guess on a record, it would start side 2. But, on CD, coming immediately after the ballad, the big, they've sold out. It just kind of smacks you in the face, like, oh no, we're still Metallica. We can do this up-tempo, thrashy thing. And, here's the proof of it. Yeah, so I guess those would kind of be my two thoughts. All right, like where it's placed on the album. I think it's, the best possible position for it in the track listing. And just, like I said, I still like the song a lot. It's just that the rest of the album is, such a masterpiece, really, start to finish. I feel like even Escape I like, and that again, kind of going back to when I first heard Ride the Lightning, the kind of lyrical message of Escape is just something you kind of need to hear when you're in that middle school, high school age, that it's okay not to conform, it's okay to do things your own way.
I mean, like you say, sometimes the weaker tracks almost make the album, and I know it's a weird thing to say, but it's kind of like, it just makes you realise the variety of taste they have. Like, I know you covered 5150, right, by Van Halen?
Yes.
And Inside, like the closing track on that album, what a weird song that is, with all the spoken word interludes, but it just kind of makes you realise the breadth of creativity on there. But yeah, 5150, actually, Jesus, I do really love that record. I've got so many memories attached. I listened to it when I was 14 in Canada, and I can't look at the Canadian flag and not hear Sammy Hagar. I don't know what it is. Just rings through. But as we always do, guys, we reach out to you on Twitter to hear your feedback on Trapped Under Ice. Dead Skin Mask, that is Rick Nashtag, saying it's both underrated and also one of the worst thrash era songs, which says a lot about how good those era songs actually are. Ralph says this song is criminally underrated and should be played more often live. Freeze 'em all, anyone? Definitely not a skipper or filler to me. This song thrashes hard as hell. The bridge section is phenomenal, and Kirk really crushes the solo on this song. The fourth best track behind Creep, Fade, and Bells. Damn, that's crazy to say, Ralph, to be honest with you. Fight Fire with Fire is a lot better than Trapped Under Ice. But, Ralph, I appreciate your opinion. Look forward to our episode as well. Me and Ralph are going to do an episode on Metallica's Doodles, where they do, Kirk and Rob will do, the song of this place and whatever. So that's a fun episode coming up soon. Deep Purple Podcast said, ever since I heard Metallica's Got to Get You Trapped Under Ice, I haven't looked at the song the same way. I haven't actually heard that one. John says...
check that out.
Yeah. One of their best songs, John says. Awesome riffs, proper Metallica. Mike says that verse, that bridge, scream, freeze, hell, thrash perfection. All band members shine. Not a wasted note in this blistering frozen masterpiece. Marcus says another filler track. And a lot of people have said that, and I don't understand that, but I can kind of, I can see where you're coming from, but I don't certainly agree. Connor says the ascending guitars in the intro always makes it feel like I was swirling around in a whirlpool of icy water. Damn, that's poetic, and I can totally see what he means, yeah. Connor saying also great thrashy song that's overshadowed by the 4 songs in front of it. Kirk really shines with a handful of solos. And finally, Danny Santana saying, was my favourite Metallica song for a long time. Some really great riffs in there. And, it's a song on, like you say, a masterpiece of an album. I can't talk down on Trapped Under Ice. I know it's a bit of a shunned track, but to me, it's still up there. I just love hearing what these guys create, and I think this is a worthy addition to the catalogue.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's you know, if the, you know, kind of up tempo, I don't want to say stereotypical thrash, you know, but if that words. If that style of Metallica is your thing, then yeah, this song is still great. It's still, you know, I know I've said this a bunch of times now, but it was for a while my favorite song on this album because that was, you know, it hits that pretty perfectly, really. Even though there's not a whole lot of, like you said, metaphor to it, the imagery in it is really, it's really powerful. So
yeah, it's very well done for what it is, certainly. And I think in lesser hands, like if Motley Crue had a song called "Trapped Under Ice" and it had to be a guy trapped in, somehow they get some strip bar underneath the ice. I don't quite know how.
Right? Yeah. Somehow there's sex involved.
Yeah. They would finagle it. They'd be like, "Yo, dude, this Neanderthal bitch had big titties in the ice." I don't know what they do, but I'm sure Vince would get that in there.
Out for my own, out to be free. One with my mind, they just can't see. No need to hear things that they say. Life's for my own, to live my own way.
Let's get to today's song, "Escape."
Oh boy.
I mean, you know, as I said in the intro, this was a song from personal experience that I just didn't know as well as Call. It was a bit of a skipper for me, where I was kind of in a bit of a naive mind state, really just kind of going through what I liked immediately and not giving it time to develop. But, you know, I'm not on my own. I'm in the company of James Hetfield, who has gone on record as saying he doesn't really like the song. When they played the song, the only time they've ever played it, they've only played this song once live recently at the Orion Festival. And during the intro, James says, you know, ask the crowd not even to name the song. You know, he should not be named. What's the problem with "Escape"? What is that about?
Well, I think it's a song with an interesting backstory to it, actually. So I think the story goes like this: that at the time they were recording the Ride the Lightning album, they were on a very small label, and they were looking for a bigger one. And so the story is that they wrote "Escape" as a way to, you know, get on a bigger label. So they were really trying to do this almost pop song for the radio. So that's what the story is about. But and you can feel it actually, because the song is really, in terms of mood and tonality, is really different than the rest of the album.
Yeah.
It's completely different. Different.
Yeah, it's quite dated. I don't mean that in a bad way, but it just feels very new wave of British heavy metal. I think especially in the sort of the pedal points early on. But Metallica's a kind of buildy band, but here the intro just, you know, no, like, you know, it feels quite medieval. It feels quite archaic. It feels quite metal, I suppose, you know, in a sort of bare bones sort of way. And I like the way that the first riff sort of continues a little bit longer on the chug than you necessarily anticipated to. So when it has the twist, and like, you know, it comes as a bit of a sharp surprise.
Oh, there is some interesting twist in the intro, and you're right. It's really, I think it's representative of what they were listening at the time. So those new wave of every British heavy metal British stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a bit different for them. There is no big power chord. It's really those small notes, and then there is the harmony with Kirk Hammett on the intro, and then there is this repeat of the riff before going into the verse. I think it's a nice intro.
Yeah, it's tasteful. It's kind of indicative of sort of the instrumental passages that the band were capable of anyway, you know, and it had a lot to it. You know, James sounds so young on this song.
Yeah, very young and very.
He was, but he just sounds it, you know.
Yeah, I think they were in their 20s.
Yeah.
Yes.
Barely out of their teens,
Yeah. So no, he sounds like actually to me that's what it is. This song, it's lyrics. In terms of lyrics, it's like a teenager that is really saying to the world that, okay, I will do my own stuff, and no one can really take me down. That's my take on the lyrics, and I think I can also hear it in the vocals, melodies.
Yeah, and a common theme in Metallica's, you know, lyrical heritage: the nomad, the wanderer. You know, wherever I may roam, arguably is a sort of spiritual sequel to Escape.
sort of self-sufficient ideas. And it's just, I guess if I'm siding with the people who don't like Escape, I could perhaps... It's not that memorable. Like, it's fun for me as a Metallica fan to listen to it and, like, appreciate it as part of this, back catalogue. But I think all in all, it's not up there with the heavy hitters just for... I don't know everything. Like, I don't think there's a middle riff, really. And I think the solo's kind of, autopilot Kirk before that really existed.
Honestly, I think the issue with Escape is that it's a good song, but it's on an amazing album.
Oh, come on.
So when you're trapped between, I don't know, Call of Cthulhu, Creeping Death, Fight Fire with Fire, it's really tough to compete,
Tough.
So it's a good song, but I would say my feeling on Escape is that it's the weakest song out of Ride the Lightning. It doesn't mean that it's bad. I really like it. I can really enjoy it. But if I'm putting Ride the Lightning and I have only time for one or two songs, then maybe that's not the one I will put first,
And melodically, musically, this is one of the most hopeful choruses Metallica have ever had.
It's a fun chorus, actually. I really like it. Honestly,
Very
I like
classic.
it's cool actually with the lead guitar that is following the vocal melody. That's nice actually.
Which James is playing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I was surprised because you were mentioning the Orion Festival when they played live. Actually, I was there, so I was one of the lucky guys. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've seen the band 40-odd times, right?
Yeah, so I was looking at the list and it's like 46 times exactly now. Yeah. Yeah, that's but I started in the 2000 something like this to really go to the shows every time I had the chance to, so yeah.
And it's Metallica, so the rhythm playing is interesting. I like the way the verses end, sort of gear changes, and that Orion performance showed it's quite a fun song to play. Like, I've not actually tried to play it. Have you covered this on the channel?
Escape, no, but I wanted to do it actually. I was thinking about doing it, and I was playing with it the last few weeks, and it's fun, but it's I'd rather spend some time on something else.
Sure. That's fair enough. And the bridge is very metal in the sense that it gets very slow. The dung, 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 which you don't really hear Metallica do that much.
No, actually, that's an interesting part in the song. This part and the riff that is behind the solo, I think those two parts, they could have been on the Black Album, honestly. To me, that's a bit the feeling I got on those riffs. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there is on this part where he sings, see them try to bring the hammer down. You actually hear the hammer.
Yeah.
There is a sound like really to make it even bigger. I think that's really cool. It works.
The bells tolling behind it as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And in the band, who I know are big Thin Lizzy fans, I'm a huge fan of Thin Lizzy as well. Actually, someone got in touch with the show recently saying that Alphabetallica had inspired them to do a Black Sabbath podcast.
Nice.
So shout out that person, Sabbath bloody podcast, I believe it's called. I'll shout them out on the next show. But in my heart of hearts, I want someone to email in and say I'm doing a Thin Lizzy podcast, because I'd love to hear that. Getting back to the Thin Lizzy thing, the police siren that you hear that was also in Jailbreak, that's quite un-Metallica to hear that.
Yeah, it's a bit corny, I would say. It's a bit it's a bit over the top. I don't know. Yeah. It works in the context of the song, but I don't know. It's a bit too much.
It is really. It's like the last 40 seconds is dominated by this wailing.
It is a long outro. It's long, yeah, absolutely.
It's a bit too long of a song. I mean, I know it's a common criticism that I throw at Metallica, but I think they are one of these bands that definitely could do a few pruning. I think even back then, like, certain songs definitely don't outstay their welcome. Call of Cthulhu, for example, I think is perfectly paced. Yep. But I think something like Escape, that outro, it doesn't necessarily deserve it. It's not like a long, heroic fade to black sort of closer. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think actually it's a pity because towards the end of the song, you have the solo, and I think the solo, although it's not really memorable, I think it works well. And I do like the ending of the solo, when it's only the solo itself, there is no more rhythm guitar behind, and it's just the open string with some notes on top of it. And that works really well. And I think they should have built up on this to really make the outro.
Yeah. Kirk does similar things on Justice. Shorty Straw, I think specifically, which is a really, really cool solo. And that works really well. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the solo to me again doesn't too stick out that much. A bit like Creeping Death, it sounds, with the breakdown just before we get the siren with the drums. It kind of has this breakaway period that I think is quite cool, and then it just kind of gets dominated by the alarm really. But yeah, all in all, Escape. I mean, where would it rank for you in like the top 100 Metallica songs? Is it gonna break that list? Because there's like 150, so there's quite a lot of spill.
Oh, I think it's in the 100.
Okay,
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
again, it's maybe not memorable, but Ride the Lightning is such a great album, and really that's one of my favorite. I think.
Oh yeah.
Maybe with probably Master of Puppets. So probably the whole Ride the Lightning and the whole Master of Puppets is in the 100. Definitely.
I have to ask you this as a guest on Alphabetallica. Where do you stand on Load and Reload, out of interest?
I like them.
Okay.
Honestly, I like them. I'm at the point where actually, regarding Metallica, they could release anything and I think I would like it. Well, not Lulu, but...
Right. I've been discovering Lulu through the show pretty much.
Yeah.
And I did Dragon recently with John Sturm, and I quite enjoy that song actually.
Really?
I think if you just consider it as Metallica as a backing band more than anything, it's just a fun side project, I suppose.
Yeah, for me this is where I draw the line. It's if James is not singing, then that's not for me.
Well, have you seen that he's going to be acting? Or he's acted in Joel Berlinger's new thing, Ted Bundy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I saw a picture on Twitter. That
he looks great.
Nice. Yeah.
It's like of course I'm going to see that. I'm incredible. Yeah, very very cool. And it looks like he has a kind of a big part then. If he's being featured in that sort of format. So. All in all, for me then, Escape, top 100, probably not a very good barometer really, because, there's a lot, hundreds, a lot of songs. It's 2/3 of their songs. So, yeah, it's okay for me. Again, I liked investigating it and thinking about it, but I think all in all, it's not something that I find too easily to recall. Orion Festival, where they play this song, how was that? Because I would have loved to have gone.
That was amazing. That was really amazing. I think that was the first time that I saw them in the US. Probably the only time I saw them in the US, actually. And yeah, that was something else. That was really cool. The festival itself was a bit strange because the bill was really diverse. So beside Metallica, it was not really metal-oriented. So that was a bit disappointing for me. But they put in place a lot of cool stuff with the car show and the guitar show and all the memorabilia. So that was really cool. Plus the big bonus of having Ride the Lightning in full. That was great. And then the next day, the following day, because they were headlining the 2 evenings, the next day was the Black Album, because that was on the Black Album tour, actually, the 20 years. Right. Which was, I think, one of the best tours they did in the recent years, the Black Album anniversary. That was amazing.
We'll get to Creeping Death. I've got really so much to say on this song. And what I like, for me, again, I guess similar to For Whom the Bell Tolls, if I wanted to mark music in an academic way, which I don't, but if I marked it purely in a sort of, you can do it with rock music a bit easier, like, okay, here, I love this riff, I love this moment, I love this melody, I love this solo, like, I'm tallying with Creeping Death from the sort of, you mentioned like Stadium, a huge symphonic intro that it has, da-da-da-da-da-bum, the absolute entrance.
It's thunderous, yeah.
Isn't it? Like, it's stirring. It's like, it's magnificent. And like, it's one of those things that when I started to learn how to play guitar, the Creeping Death intro is really fun to play, and it's quite simple to play. And it kind of, playing it in my room, with a shitty battery amp, I was like, hang on, this is so simple. But it's like, Metallica are the kings of doing that. And the intro riff especially, it really feels like something's going to happen over the next 5-6 minutes.
It is. It's quite epic. Yeah. but before like the the main riff kicks in, and there's something really cool about like I think there's a bass lick before, and that sounds Egyptian itself. What Cliff Burton did there, I was like, when I first noticed, I was like, oh, okay, holy shit, like. Man had so many tricks up his sleeve.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. You hear him like do-do-do. You hear him like just quite high up the fretboard. Yeah. So lead it in, and like that's kind of we mentioned this before on the show. Like it's kind of a nice trick when you're writing riffs to go an octave up, and sometimes it's a bit of a cheat, but there it does work. And you mentioned the Egyptian. I'm no music expert. I think it's employing like the Phrygian modes or something like that, but it's quite. It could come off as being a little, Power Slave by Iron Maiden, which is plastered on Egyptian imagery. It could, no offense to Iron Maiden, I love Iron Maiden, but like it's a bit kind of whatever, But I think Metallica, they use a theme really well here, don't they? The whole Egyptian sort of flavor to the song.
Yeah, no, there's great imagery in it. I was going to mention Power Slave myself. Kind of apart from that, there isn't a lot of great songs that I could think of that have like the Ancient Egypt and fucking Exodus and 10 Plagues, which would have been shit crack altogether. I can't imagine that would have been fun.
Awful.
But yeah, no, it is the best one for it, and. Whenever they do that, whenever they seem to have like a theme in their songs, they do it excellently. It's they're great songwriters.
Yeah, unbelievably so. And you mentioned the lyrics where. For me, it's the marrying of this great imagery, this Exodus imagery, that everyone's sort of familiar with. Like, I don't know if you remember, but I remember Rugrats did like a sort of Passover special or something, and I learned a lot of my stuff from there. But yeah, and they're talking about 400 years curse and Hebrews born to serve the Pharaoh. I love the reference game here. I love he says in the second verse, I never knew what this meant until I looked it up. He goes, now let my people go. Land of Goshen? Which, I'm not a theologian. I don't know about you, Adam, but that always went over my head.
I think so too.
Apparently, Land of Goshen, as according to James Hetfield, well, according to Wikipedia, but James Hetfield's reference, is named in the Bible as the place in Egypt given to the Hebrews by the Pharaoh of Joseph. This is in Genesis, apparently, and the land from which they later left Egypt at the time of Exodus. So, I mean, he's just kind of pulling for that. I know he has a religious background. I know it was more Christian Science, and maybe it would have been well versed in this sort of stuff. But it's those little things that make Metallica a bit more than everyone else,
definitely. There's the thing that James Hetfield does in the song as well that I really enjoy is like the first word of every line. He kind of like screams it.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of passion and fury in that, and it makes the track really captivating. Like I know like down the line from the Black Album onwards, like there's a lot of Hetfield is like stuff like that. But that's one of my favorite parts of the song. Like it's really hooking.
Heat, and his voice is just a bit higher, but it's still got a real poison in it. And I loved, obviously at this time Cliff was still in the band, but I loved later editions when Jason he would really bark those words. I
think I heard a couple of those live versions maybe.
Yeah, I mean this is obviously a song that they play constantly.
Constantly.
It's never out of the set list. Let's just check the list here. It's been played 1,458 times.
Jesus.
It's been played over 1,000 times. I didn't even... I mean, of course they've had that many shows, but that is...
Yeah. It's crazy when you think about it, isn't it?
Jesus Christ. It first performed October 31st, Halloween, 1983 in California.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It was debuted on then. And then September 14th this year, so, just over a month ago, it was played in Germany there. So, yeah, it does just... stick in. And for me it's the quality to a certain extent, not just of the lyrics, which I think are an incredible garnish, and the themes on top of it. It's not just sort of pillaging or whatever, we're the best, or empty platitudes. It's something actually kind of cool, like and the fact that the song's called Creeping Death, which is kind of the plague, the ultimate, past the frogs and the bulls, etc. So him being the personification of that. And the song, I don't want to get too touchy feely or whatever, but the song has a bit of momentum to me, almost like a creeping death, a spirit, a spectre kind of moving forward, and it happens in that main riff. So we have Cliff doing his fancy little bit of the fretboard, the da da da, and then it's that very da 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 da, like it's very stuttery, repetitive, but so anthemic.
Yeah, it's kind of like ominous in a way, almost evil, like something that kind of like Black Sabbath, or even again with Maiden on Power Slave, like the riff and that was fairly evil itself. But I think that was the intention. They pulled it off fairly well.
Yeah, and James is a chugger, and seeing him play this live, especially, I mean, this riff is, you can't alternate pick this riff, weirdly. You have to really get a kind of a sense of pace going there, and then it's just again, I was saying, the tally, the quality, so it's going from this riff into the da 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 da, which is again is very simple. It's open free, second fret, like, there's no Paul Gilbert, Steve Vai, not that there needs to be in this sort of music, of course, but it's the beautiful simplicity of the whole thing, and then Hetfield's vocals taking back over the riff, and the chorus is classic catch and release, really, opening it up for people to sing "I'm Creeping Death" at the end to kind of take on that as well. And just so let it be written, so let it be done, very ancient,
I think I was reading about that, like there was a kind of like a movie based on, as we were saying, the 10 Plagues and Exodus or something like that, and it was mentioned in that. I'm sure also because we're probably mentioned in the fucking Bible or whatever, where it was originally from. But
I'm sure. I'm not sure where James had come off with it, but it works so well. I'm sent here by the chosen one as well, which I mean, we always like some heaven and hell in the metal, and it's so strong. And just the way he sings it, I'm creeping death, like, he's kind of owning up to it. I love it, and it just. There's little stop-starts moment as well, like the verses will end and there'll just be like a quick pause, and then it'll just kick right back in.
Very heavy.
Just a real sense of whiplash. I mean, there's
so much you could say.
It is like, it's such a, I just listened to this song forever, like, ever since I first heard it, really. It's always spellbinding to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, definitely. The first time I heard it as well, like, a lot of the times when, like, I hear a song by a band and I like it, it's for the first time listening, that'll be my favorite song for good, listening to them. But not in this case. I love the solo on this song as well.
Man.
Kirk Hammett can be like a little hit and miss with me, but I think he's got this one down, like just blistering from the start, and then like that kind of melody, the kind of towards the end.
Oh man,
that's the one. It just like it has this really, really strong finish before the bridge, and probably maybe my favorite Metallica solo.
I probably agree with you. Yeah, I think it's my favorite out and out guitar solo that they do. Like, I could maybe arguably point to say the intro of Fade to Black, I think, is mind blowing as well. But that's,
of course.
That
and one as well.
Any of Kirk's era of those lead lines, Sanitarium as well, is fantastic. He's a very, very intelligent player. But I agree. In terms of just sort of, mentioned Paul Gilbert before, or your Jason Becker, or whatever, your guitar quote unquote hero, he's employing just a lot of sort of common techniques here, like the string skips and like the really fast blistering runs. But it's all just packaged in a very melodic, enjoyable, exciting way that climaxes. And yet again, I don't want to force a theme, it feels a little Egyptian to me, this solo.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I completely agree. Sorry, excuse me. Fits the team perfectly.
The solo is like, just it took the wind out of you, I think. It's just and the end
exactly.
The end harmonies as well, like you say, the da-na-na-na-na, it gets people sort of singing along, and like I don't know how many times you've seen this live, but it's kind of a trademark where like when the solo happens, James will often have an ad lib, so he might just be like Mr. Hammett or like Kirky Baby, or he says, I think he says Kirky Baby in Moscow 91, which is a great performance of this song as well. But they get the singing of that lead there, and then into the I guess I call it the die riff.
Die, bye, man.
Yeah, man.
It's pretty, and that's another heavy riff there, like to complement, what James is singing. Like it does feel, evil, and you kind of feel a little uneasy listening to it. It's
Yeah.
It is brilliant.
It is absolutely brilliant, and it just it's such a common thing seeing this song live that people will just chant "Die Now," and it's a glorious thing to behold. I remember them playing this in Nimes, which is another fucking incredible concert. Anyone that hasn't seen Metallica 2009, it was like a DVD release they did in France. It's so fucking good. They're in a Coliseum, and I think this is the second song. They open with Blackened, and then they go into Creeping Death, and the rendition of Creeping Death is amazing, as is the crowd doing this. And again, I know it's an Egyptian riff. It sounds very Egyptian. It sounds very, it works very well. And I don't know if you're aware, Kirk Hammett, actually, this is one of his major contributions to the Metallica's song work. This is his riff from Exodus.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that now. I'm a big fan of Exodus.
Are you?
I am, yeah. I got like the Bonded by Blood and like a lot of their earlier stuff, and I think was one or two they released over the last couple of years. But yeah, no, I had no idea.
Yeah. He it was hang on, let's see what it is here. Yeah, but it was definitely something it was originally, the song was called Die by His Hand and had been part of Exodus' set list for live shows, but was never used on any albums.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it's funny when these things happen, when people take elements of songs each other, but fucking hell, it works. It elevates the song. It's kind of like, it's oddly ahead of its time, I guess, and kind of like the gang vocals aspect of it, that it sort of encourages the crowd to do,
Yeah, no, it is. It'll get you moving, all right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, just on the Creeping Death Wikipedia page, of which is quite substantial, actually, very, very interesting read, and it just says simply, the song's middle section, with its ominous chants of die set to a Phrygian mode chord progression, is a fan participation staple during Metallica shows, and it does become that communal kind of thing. It's scaring me, actually, because they played London yesterday and didn't play Creeping Death, so I'm like, please play it for Birmingham, please. I'm like, Lars, if you're listening, like, that would be don't do Ain't My Bitch instead, please.
Have you seen the set list for what they have played?
Yes. Yeah.
When did their tour start?
So, I mean, they've been doing the Hardwired tour, I think, since July, August time. They started in stadiums, but I mean, Metallica are the sort of band that, are constantly changing up the set list and, doing new things. So, let's have a look, see if I can find the London one, because here we go. So they opened with Hardwired, of course, into Atlas Rise. Seek and Destroy is the third song, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, that's another personal favorite.
Yeah. They got some great old. They go Through the Never, Sanitarium, Bells, Fuel is often there. They do. Obviously, they don't do Creeping Death though. They do a lot. Of
no.
But they don't do Creeping Death. But yeah, just that whole chanting section, I think is really good. I should just say as well, on the solo, Kirk solo, another thing that I really like, which I love when guitar players do, and James is particularly good at it, when the soloist goes into the solo, they'll play the main riff, but they'll sort of invert it slightly. Like James plays slightly different chords. They're slightly more harmonic, if that's the right word to use. They bring out a bit more character in the backing rather than just what we've heard beneath. Maybe Cliff is doing something similar as well. But it's just that sort of attention to detail. It's not trying to not that you're getting away with anything, but most bands just repeat the riff and the solo goes over it. But this song and Blackened, it happens in loads and loads of songs as well. James does this. He's smart enough to do this, and I think it's just. I don't know, I don't know about you, Adam, but like doing so many episodes on this show, I just love James Hetfield more and more each time. I'm just like such a fan.
He's an incredible front man. Like, he really is. From the live shows that I have seen, I've got a couple there. One of my favorites being, I don't know if you've seen the Big Four one.
Oh yes, was that
DVD
in
that
Bulgaria?
That was the one, yeah. And just like his crowd control, like everything, just his stage presence, everything. He's fantastic. Like.
Yeah. Just, I mean, everything about him, from physically to just what he can put forth on the guitar and come up with compositionally as well, is something that I just adore. And I think this song, it's just it's not only a brilliant song, but it's a brilliant like early song. Like, how the fuck is this off their second album as well? That is crazy to like come out with such quality, especially Delete. But just. Some of it's quite poetic. Rule the Midnight Air, the Destroyer. Like, it's just very laconic, concise.
It is. It's incredibly well written. And another one off that album that you wouldn't think would be like so great that early on is, again, it would be Fade to Black. Like you'd think that like if they'd be putting out something like that great a bit more into their career. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that again is another one that would rank
incredibly highly. For myself, that is absolutely mind blowing. But Creeping Death. I mean, please in the comments, email in, let us know what you think of this incredible song. Hopefully, you concur most of the sentiments we've been saying, and it is just, it's quite lengthy. 6 minutes 36. So, even for a band like Metallica, this is quite a long song.
It doesn't feel that long, doesn't it? No, it feels like it just blisters through.
It really does. And it's like, even at the end, they try something new. So you have the harmony, but then play into the crash of the chords beneath it. And then Kirk again doing like a blistering, very much a continuation of the solo in technique and aim. But it just, it just plays together. And then it crescendos into the beginning again, with them ending it with a very sort of
with the
very new wave of heavy metal. It rises and falls unbelievably well. They always have an eye for that. Again, similar to James doing the riff underneath the solo, they could just fade out, but they don't. They sort of end it. They really do.
Like an epic crash.
It's. I love and any closing thoughts on Creeping Death?
Not really. Apart from I personally think it is like the best Metallica song. Conceptually, the riffs. It's so easy to like. It's just draws you in from the start. Definitely my favorite.
Yeah, it's definitely mine as well. In Guitar World magazine, actually, it was ranked number 1. Which is quite interesting.
By Metallica, Metallica's best song, yeah.
Metallica's best song.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I would wonder.
It's great to see it getting like the recognition it deserves, like over Puppets and stuff like that. The things that you think would be the obvious choice.
Yeah, it is. I do like it better than Master of Puppets, Creeping Death. But they're both. Don't get me wrong. They're both like 10s. But there's something about this song. It's just relentlessly exciting still. I love everything about it. I love the construction. I love the themes. I love the delivery. I love that it's their second album. Like, there's just so many things. And the song, is played to this day. This song was more than 30 years old, and it's still it's great. It's so heavy, and it's just, I just love the way they perform it.
Have you ever heard a decent cover or anything from it? Because I'm trying to think of that now.
No. I haven't actually. I'm sure the thing about Metallica is they're one of these bands. They're a bit like the Beatles, where you just search one of their songs on Spotify, you'll inevitably find a cover of it, somewhere. So I'm sure there'll be one out there. But I mean, I just don't think that anything could really do
anything would do it justice. Yeah,
no, and justice honest. For all. But apart from this, I don't think there's any justice for a good cover.
Yeah, so as soon as I got my hands on Master of Puppets for myself, I then, of course, dug back into the archive, found Ride the Lightning next, and then Kill 'Em All. That's kind of how it worked out for me. So, I mean, obviously, you pop in Ride the Lightning, you start with track 1 and Fight Fire with Fire, and they wrap up with the opus that is The Call of Cthulhu, and it remains one of my favorite Metallica songs of all time. I'm thrilled to be here talking about this tune.
Yeah, and I was doing a bit of research on the song, actually, and I was aware that Dave Mustaine, was involved with the writing of this song. It's disputed what kind of, what his footing is in it. I don't know if you're aware of Hangar 18 by Megadeth.
Oh, yes, of course. I'm a huge Megadeth fan.
Yeah, a lot of people draw major comparisons between these two songs, especially a lot of people say Dave wrote the intro, and you can kind of hear that in certain elements of that song, but I wasn't aware that the song was originally called When Hell Freezes Over.
When Hell Freezes Over, but then a portion of it as well used to be called When the Hills Ran Red. Now, this is going back to an interview that I did with Kirk Hammett probably 10 or 11 years ago, and we were talking about the instrumentals because at the time Death Magnetic had just came out, and Suicide and Redemption was sort of a return to form as far as instrumentals on a Metallica album go. So I asked him about it, and he's one of these guys, Tom, that's so forthcoming, and he digs back into his brain and pulls out these cool tidbits of information that I don't think anybody was aware of beforehand. So I was fortunate enough to have this bit of knowledge, unveiled to me on a Kirk Hammett interview, that The Hills Ran Red was something that Dave Mustaine was working on with Cliff Burton. Part of it became The Call of Cthulhu, and part of it became a song called Leper Messiah, which you heard on Master of Puppets.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah.
A huge dispute as to The Hills Ran Red. That portion, there's a huge dispute between the Metallica and the Megadeth camp as to who actually wrote that. Dave claims it's all his. Metallica, well, they'll dispute it, but I don't know the answer to that question, but I can tell you that was at least a portion of what became the Call of Cthulhu.
I don't know how many people can say it's about Metallica, but this song in particular, pretty much changed my life, literary-wise, forever. Like, I never knew what the title meant, because, I got into the band as a young teenager. I didn't know who Cthulhu was. It didn't mean anything to me. And I remember I was maybe about 16, 17, and like most 16, 17-year-olds, like, had my mind blown by Edgar Allan Poe. Like, I sort of got into it, and I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is so old and so subversive and crazy. And I remember on Amazon, actually, it was like things you might like, and it was like H.P. Lovecraft, The Call of Cthulhu, and I was like, hang on, they're spelling Cthulhu wrong. Like, it's got a K in it, not a C, and kind of explored that kind of mythos. And instrumentals can work on their own way, can't they? The quality of this song's fantastic, but I can't help, especially when I hear Cliff Burton's kind of nautical bass garbles throughout, to think of like this ancient beast below the water,
Yeah, you pretty much stole my thunder there. As far as Cliff's contribution to the song, I before that, I had certainly never heard bass sound like that before. And I think going back then to Kill 'Em All and hearing Anesthesia Pulling Teeth gave me a little bit of context as to who Cliff Burton really was and what a talent, what an amazing talent he was. But yeah, you're right about the certain just random bass sounds that are very creature-like. And you were talking about literary devices here just a bit ago. I mean, prior to knowing Metallica, I didn't know who Hemingway or Poe or Lovecraft but I certainly was motivated to look into it at that point. So I think I kind of became a bit of a reader thanks to Metallica, funny enough.
Yeah, that's true, actually, because obviously For Whom the Bell Tolls is Hemingway. And again, I think I read that book because of the song. So they're referencing Hemingway, they're referencing Lovecraft, they have all these kind of... And Lovecraft is something that comes up again and again in Metallica. The Thing That Should Not Be from Master of Puppets, and also All Nightmare Long. I forget the name now. All Nightmare Long is based on these nightmare dogs that kind of enter your dreams or something. And so, they have all these references, but I mean, let's stick into the song as a whole, because one of the markers of these early Metallica records are these incredible instrumentals. Like, if I'm forced, I'd probably say I like Orion a little bit more than Call of Cthulhu, but that's not to say this isn't a masterpiece. And I love the intro, Andy, the whistling kind of gentle wind and that guitar arpeggio just coming in slow.
So growing up in the upper Midwest here in the United States, I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is even further north than Des Moines, Iowa. So we get pretty cold in the wintertime. That sound is so reminiscent of so many winter nights, laying in bed at night and hearing that wind whistle up against the windows. So that's sort of what the memory it conjures up for me. The other memory it conjures up for me is when I was very young and I owned a Walkman. This is how old I am, Tom. So I'm listening to my Walkman, and I have Ride the Lightning in, and Call of Cthulhu comes on, and we're driving somewhere with the family, with my mom, dad, and my siblings, and there's this really massive, gnarly-looking storm coming right at us. And the intro to Call of Cthulhu, as this storm front is approaching, it's a very vivid memory for me. And then, all hell breaks loose, basically. I don't know. I mean, for me, I think I was probably 9 or 10 years old at the time, but that's as vivid a memory as I have at that age.
Very Lovecraftian, actually, what you're conjuring there. And the song, it begins with, a lot of people will point to Hangar 18, as we say, of being this part, Mustaine's part, whatever. But for me, it's the very simplistic nature. It's that bass, it's that dung, dung, dung. That's very simple. That's 3 notes, but it really kind of gives a certain sense of heft, a certain sense of weight to it. And I love the fact that it takes us 90 seconds to get to the heavy part of the song.
Yeah, the buildup. And that's, something that is a hallmark of early Metallica in particular. Something I talked to Lars Ulrich about years ago was how they lead off albums. It's always this really slow build in the 80s. And then it just like Hit the Lights is a great example. And then Fight Fire with Fire on Ride the Lightning. And then, of course, Battery has the same basic idea. But like with Call of Cthulhu, that rhythm part in the beginning, after hearing the whistle of that wind, I mean, kind of Game of Thrones-ish if you think about it now. But, Lovecraft, sure. But yeah, if you want to be more current about your pop culture, I guess it would be Game of Thrones. But anyway, that's for me. I mean, it's that rhythm guitar, and then everybody else starts to come in sort of slowly, and then it just, like I said, all hell breaks loose. That's what happens.
Yeah, completely. And listening with headphones as well the other day, I noticed, I guess, horns or something like that can be heard in the background as well. Like maybe that's a Burton influence, maybe this is the band as a whole, Fleming, I don't know. But it's not just a kind of, it's not a song without words. Like it's a very well crafted instrumental. It's very well put together, and kind of when we get into that main riff as well, I guess you could argue that's kind of where the center point is. I love how the two guitars behave. So you have the sort of the main power chords kind of drumming it down there, and then you have kind of the spine of the song, the sort of the arpeggios that we've heard before, the dun 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 dun, kind of on top of it, just giving it this real weight to it, and then it kind of comes back to the build, and it just, the song's 8 minutes, almost 9 minutes. It's 8 minutes 53 seconds, but like I don't think it ever gets boring for me. It definitely has a journey to it.
Yeah, and what's great is, as a guitar guy, I'm a guitar guy, Tom, and I love what both James and Kirk bring to the table. And in this song in particular, everybody sort of gets their moment, if you notice. I mean, James with the very percussive, heavy chunk, that's James. And then Kirk with this, like, off the rails. You feel like he's a train going way fast for the track, and he's going to fly off the damn track at any time, and that's sort of what the solo feels like in the middle.
Yeah, the solo, the sense of release. Like, I've been a critic of Kirk, and I will continue to be a critic of Kirk for Alphabetallica, but I am a huge fan of him. I want to reinforce that. The guy can really get a certain sense of catharsis through his notes, like few other guitar players. And because it's classic Kirk as well. We see this in Orion, where he'll just kind of do a sort of melody line, so that kind of that building riff that kind of takes part in the end of the song as well, him building over it. But when he gets to that main bend, that now, it's a sense of chaos, isn't there, about this song that's so glorious?
Very much so. And then it all just kind of like comes back together again, and there's that little simple breakdown like you hear in the intro of the song, and then they all come together again with this big explosion, almost orchestral at the very end, which I am absolutely in love with the end of this song.
I completely agree. The end of this song has something very, I don't know, almost classic metal about it. Something quite symphonic, almost, like, something very arch there. But yeah, and just to get quickly back to the solo, because obviously I can't stop praising Kirk enough. I'm sure most people know what I'm talking about. There's a lick in here, quite a dissonant lick, like he just kind of repeats that thing, and it's slightly, the note choice is slightly odd, but it just conjures this sense of release there that I think is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, it that end as well, like one of the things that I like is when we get the dun dun dun, you can finally hear, because there's so many layers to this song, and only if you're listening do you really hear Cliff, even though he's doing genius stuff. But I just, like, in the best possible way, it's like, what the hell is he doing? Like, there's this crazy song, and he's just making these weird noises, like, they work, but I just love that vision that he has.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, like you said, it conjures up so many different images, but the one is, of course, of the beast, and you're right. What's strange about this song, like, you don't visit this idea until Justice, when they completely mix Jason out of the mix, but you really don't hear any Cliff at all for the vast majority of this song. But the things he throws in there, again, at the time, listening as an 8 or 9-year-old as I was, I had no idea that was a bass guitar back then.
Yeah.
When I come to find these things out, mind blown, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just, I was reading some reviews of this song, and someone said, like, oh, Cliff's doing like a solo over the whole song and stuff, and I don't quite agree with that, just because you just can't necessarily hear him, but you can kind of hear, like, these kind of subnautical bubbles that he's doing underneath the song, and the song being called Call of Cthulhu, I think, just kind of reinforces this sense with it. But yeah, I agree, it is the detail as well, and it's just kind of like, I think it's testament to this song. And one of the things that I love about Metallica's music, like, it's not, it's not that old, really. These songs are maybe 30 or so years old, but this is timeless to me. Like, from 1983 to 2017, like, it's not lost an inch. It's so powerful, so emotive and affecting.
Yeah, I think the only thing that maybe sounds a little bit dated, and this is just technology being technology, but the way that Fleming recorded and mixed the album, it's got an airy quality to it, if you know what I'm saying. And maybe that's a little dated, where you could go, okay, this is a recording from the 1980s. But again, just a byproduct of where technology was at the time. Maybe it was Sweet Silence Studios and what they had going on there, environmentally. I don't know, but that's maybe the only thing, if I'm going to knock the production at all, and I don't, because I preserve this thing for the rest of time. Yeah, absolutely. But I think if there's one thing, the music itself, you're absolutely correct, 100%. This thing is an absolute epic. It's a classic, and it'll be cherished for generations to come.
Yeah. It's insatiable, really. And, as a fan as well, as someone who appreciates the history of Metallica, it's quite incredible that this song's coming, I think, just about a year after Kill 'Em All. It's like, what a transformation.
Yeah, one of the things that I talked to or asked James about specifically when I did I don't know if you're aware, I did a special. It's a 10-year deal. It looks at, or 10-album deal, where it looks at everything from Kill 'Em all the way to current day and Hardwired to Self-Destruct. Now, I was instructed by management to construct questions for specific members. Don't ask like the easy, stupid questions. Challenge these guys. Challenge them with the questions. So I was asking them all these questions and asking them to put themselves back, in the case of Ride the Lightning, to 1984 and where their heads were at in terms of, where they were and where their headspace was. For James, he specifically points out that leap between 1983 and 1984 was massive. I mean, when you look at the scope of Metallica and their growth, the early days obviously are going to be, you're going to see the most growth there. But I mean, between 83 and 84, I mean, those songs, in James' words, back in 83 were songs about headbanging and breaking stuff, essentially. And then, along comes 1984, and they've broadened their scope a bit. They've seen some places, some things, met some new people. I mean, broaden their horizons, Tom, and that, out comes something like Ride the Lightning, which is, I mean, really night and day considering where Kill 'Em All was and what it was.
Yeah, no, completely. And at the risk of sounding like music critic cliche, it's like a Beatles level leap. It's like, when you look at from Help to Rubber Soul to Revolver, that kind of 18 months or something, it is just like, baffling. But, these guys are geniuses. Like, they just needed this opportunity, really, and they just growed with it. And, Call of Cthulhu, it's interesting. It remains a song in their repertoire. They've performed it 82 times live. The first time they performed it was August 28th, 1983 in La Cruces in the US there. And they last performed it February 9th, 2017. So this year they performed it in Copenhagen, Denmark. But Andy, fair to say the most famous version is probably the S&M version.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought S&M up because, I am such a fan of what they did, the San Francisco Symphony. I mean, I'm a metalhead, I'm a rock guy, Tom, but, when you get to hear your favorite band collaborating on a level with musicians that have no idea going into it how this is going to come out. I mean, everybody, I think, even Metallica were a bit kind of apprehension about, they had a little bit of apprehension about this, but the way it all turned out, especially Call of Cthulhu, which I believe leads off the entire performance, is nothing short of breathtaking. I loved it.
Yeah, no, me too, exactly. I mean, the beauty of S&M is that it worked. It was a huge gamble, and it paid off massively. I believe, I'm just checking this right now, but I believe they won a Grammy, or at least nominated for a Grammy, for that S&M performance as well. I'm sure someone can correct us in the comments there, but yeah, wonderful. And I think it brought out the best of the orchestra as well. Like a lot of S&M, sometimes it's kind of like there's not too much for them to do, like on certain songs. It doesn't mean it's not great to hear the backing, but I think in Cthulhu you hear Michael Kamen really letting his imagination run wild with the soundscapes, and they deliver so much against the backdrop, don't they?
Yeah, you won't hear an orchestra play any root notes whatsoever in a song. They are adding complete atmosphere, and they're adding things that Metallica would never have dreamed of. So, I mean, to be able to hear that, Metallica playing their notes, playing the root notes, and then the orchestra adding what they added to it. Again, that's why S&M, such a cherished collection of music for me personally.
Yeah, no, entirely. And yeah, I mean, Cthulhu, it's been a joy really listening to this song over the past week, making my notes, and there's certain moments in the song that still have my hair standing on end. Like, I have about a 20-minute walk to work or whatever, and I tend to listen to the song once or twice, and I've never got bored of it. Like, there's certain songs that we listen to, I just feel like, oh, I don't want to listen to bloody Attitude again, you know what I mean? But this, I'm just like, oh god, I'm going to keep listening to this forever. I mean, where does this rank out of interest for you, Andy, in the sort of pantheon of Metallica instrumentals?
Boy, that's a tough question. I think I'm with you that Orion, it doesn't really get any better than that. I think a close second's Call of Cthulhu. And I think what you're getting from Call of Cthulhu is sort of the genesis of what became Orion a couple years later. So I think they recorded Call of Cthulhu, were probably very happy with it, and probably learned some things and went, I wish we could have done this, and probably applied it to what became ultimately what I think is the best instrumental Metallica ever did. So if I were to rank them, if I had to, Orion, Call of Cthulhu. I mean, I think Anesthesia Pulling Teeth is more than just a solo, or or more than just an instrumental. I mean, that thing is on its own pedestal as far as I'm concerned. So there you have it. I mean, I think it's so tough to rank, but I just think because Orion was like the perfect product, you can't rank it anything other than one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love Call of Cthulhu, but you can't really say what you can say about Orion. I think Orion is truly beautiful in certain portions. Like it's just beyond wonderful, certain sections. And there is, as a sentimental Metallica fan, there is this kind of cliff, like Orion is cliff to a certain extent, like, it kind of, and you can't help but feel quite sad when you listen to it, and quite nostalgic as well.